I'm here on the screen. I'm gonna give us a 3, 2, 1 count, and then we'll go. So 3,
Let's do it.
2, 1, ready. Here we go. Hi everyone. Welcome
Hi,
to
everybody.
episode 10 of Somehow You Didn't Die on Your Way to Work. How are you all doing tonight? He said, expecting them to answer.
Well, you're probably doing better than the people we're going to talk about.
Yeah, you don't have third-degree burns, so you're fine.
You'll be all right. And
So-
Craig just dipped out.
Did it?
Yeah.
No fucking
Oh,
way.
because we had the Discord muted. All right. Well, I guess we just don't have that backup now. You guys, we're trying to make a better quality recording for you all. And it's a little janky sometimes, so just bear with us.
Yeah, for behind the curtain is we have been previously been recording this with OBS natively out of my computer, which is great when Zach gets a new microphone that's so much better than his old microphone that I don't realize his audio is stepping on mine constantly for like 3 or 4 episodes, which is why some of them sound like shit. Because you can't hear me, which is something that's never been said before in real life. At which point we start using this Discord bot called Craig.chat to record our Discord calls, which is great when we remember to turn it on, and by we I mean me. And then now in episode 10 we're trying Zencaster, which better work because we muted ourselves to do that, and Craig apparently couldn't hear anything, so the Craig chat has now gone away. Anyways, we're still here. Hopefully, if this sounds like
trying
ass,
so hard.
If this sounds like ass, we will never use Zencaster again. We're on the paid free trial right now, so we're gonna see how this goes. But anyways, now that we have gotten all of our notes out of the way, which we haven't, there's still some left, and later on, we have to go into the slideshow. So onwards to the first slide, which is the news. Yeah, this is bad. This is a picture of bad happening.
You guys wanted safety issues in public transit. I would say that a runaway funicular is one of the more unusual incidents that we could have thrust into our laps.
A runaway electric-powered funicular, too.
I still don't know exactly how that works.
So as far as I can tell, basically, the funicular is so precisely balanced that the motors... Usually a funicular uses gravity with a small motor to propel the cars up and down, and the motor is located in the cable house. In this case, the motors are on the cars.
So these are tilted streetcars, basically.
Yeah, because apparently it used to be like pneumatically powered or hydraulically powered or something like that.
Ooh.
So it now being... and it was modernized to electric at some point in the 20s or 30s, I think. This is the Ascensor Gloria or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it in Portuguese. It crashed during rush hour. The cabin was full with like 32 people in it or something like that. 16 died. And this was on September 3rd, I should say. We're recording this on... What day is it? It's the 14th. Yeah, we're recording this on September 14th. The cable... Apparently the cable snapped, or at least frayed to the point where it could no longer hold the car in place. And the car ran away down the hill because... And initial reports are saying this. The brakes on the car are not sufficient to hold it if the cable snaps.
Now, this is an outcome that I don't think would be very hard to foresee as a reasonable possibility. So I'm wondering why there wasn't some other brake installed already.
I bet a lot of people are wondering that.
San Francisco has had this figured out for well over a century. They have there's one lever at the controls of the cable cars that all it does is it puts a big steel wedge down into that little slot where it grabs the cable. And usually anytime they have to use it, it exerts so much force stopping the car that the wedge is then welded into place and has to be cut out. But the alternative is killing a bunch of people like this. So yeah, I really want to know why something like that was not installed.
I'm not certain either. And then even better, apparently Lisbon, because this God, I Lisbon, Portugal is where this happened. I didn't say that before. The the company that operates this for this, like the city, outsourced the maintenance some time ago, and the maintenance company has not done a good job.
W-
And then, and on top of that, apparently the location in which the cable connects to the car is in a physically inaccessible location under the frame, and so it's impossible
Okay.
to service because obviously, as
Well,
you can
well, no, 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 no. That's not an allowable status for any part of a vehicle. You can't. You just don't service it.
I am not certain of the things yet. A lot of the news is in Portuguese and has been translated out of Portuguese. I don't know 100%, but apparently the cable was mounted in such a way that you can't really get to it because, as you can see in the top image, there's no car barn or anything for these things. They just sort of are on the end of the street.
Oh, that's
So,
just where they live.
as far as I can tell, I'm not a native Lisboner. I don't know where the other end of this is, but this is like the reason why there's two cars here is this is the end of the track at the bottom. Maybe there's something more at the top, but even then, the design of how the cars goes makes it pretty impossible to tow them onto a flat section of ground. So, um I imagine that they just sort of live there, and to service them you have to go under them, which might make it a little bit difficult to do.
Yeah, I mean,
So anyway, the top car number 1 ran away down the hill, made it to the last curve, and then derailed and crashed into a subway. I do want everyone to note that a funicular did crash into a subway because you can see the subway sign on the top image.
I'm just
Subway
picture.
sandwiches.
I'm just picturing like some poor Francisco comes out here and every day his job is to maintain these things and he tries his damnedest to keep it going, but there's that one part that he knows is there and it acts sort of like a Schrodinger's cat to him
Yeah.
because that part is both in perfect condition and terrible condition, but he doesn't know because he can't observe it. And if he observes it, then it ruins the status of it.
Yeah. Again, we will cover this in more detail when information is released, hopefully in English. I'm not in any way certain as to how this happened yet. Other things that's not visible in these images is that the track for like 100 feet going in the direction that the car had come from is just like gone because the cable ripped up the center of the thing as it pulled out.
Oh, Jesus, that's a lot of tension.
I don't know, or as it was like as the car ripped along. I'm not certain yet. We'll get more images eventually. Um, I don't know whether people are blaming this on neoliberalism yet because people love to do that. But
I can't. I'll tell you what. I cannot wait to find the the Portuguese equivalent of the NTSB's report on this and having to painstakingly translate it page by page just so that we can do an episode. And
yeah,
I would do that for all of you. I hope you know that
I
because
I I
partially
would
because I'm
too.
deathly curious too.
Yeah, I'm more deathly curious about is how the fuck this thing just folded up like it was made of paper.
I it. I mean, these cars are. It it looks like steel, but it also
But it's
looks like the
not.
thinnest, cheapest steel they could have possibly used. I don't even know. Are they wood bodied with like a steel sheath
I
covering?
could not tell you. I don't know enough about Portuguese funiculars. If you have Portuguese funicular autism, please reach out to us at our email address that Zach made up, and I'm going to make him
Oh,
say it.
oh my God! Where's the pen? I have to write it down again. Oh shit! I'm so sorry. Hang
At
on,
this
hang
point, you
on.
just need to get it tattooed on the inside of your arm.
Actually what I need to do is I need to get the label maker and put that label on this little shelf that's above my desk. S- Somehow you didn't die on your way to work. Okay, so if you have the Lisbon Funicular Autism, please let us know by sending us an email at syddowtw@gmail.com. And that email address will be in the description in case you missed that.
Yes. Um, and that's this is still a breaking story in as much as anything that happened 2 weeks ago can be breaking. We'll cover it more when we know more, and we'll get back to you guys. Onwards to the next slide. This one is more of a just me sort of thing. How can they do this? Like an
I
emphasis on
don't.
the how.
Okay, so we
So
covered in the
for
last episode that so many
last
SEPTA
couple of
services,
episodes,
yeah, so many SEPTA services were being cut, and that's the SEPTA that runs basically all the transit in the Philadelphia area.
yeah, it's the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority.
And I think the last one was right after like the deadline had passed, and it was like, well, okay, they're just getting massive service cuts. I think we figured 57 different routes were being cut entirely.
At
And
least, and more were going to come in stages throughout the year.
yeah, and all of a sudden a judge just goes, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, so as far as I've been able to find out, basically a Republican judge in Philadelphia basically was presented with a lawsuit that claimed that the SEPTA cuts were racist and put low income riders and minorities at a disadvantage because they were cutting the low income neighborhoods. Um, Even Justin Rosniak on Well There's Your Problem has said that this is not the case, that basically Philadelphia has a lot of low income neighborhoods widely dispersed through the city. I believe he said that. I hope I'm not putting words in his mouth. But
I think I
basically,
heard that.
Philadelphia has a lot of low income neighborhoods everywhere, and they are, in fact, going to be cutting the rich neighborhood services too. It's just that the rich neighborhood services are usually on SEPTA's regional rail, which the cuts were not coming until later this year, early next year, as the as like more of a progression, because you can cut the bus services almost immediately, but because there's a lot of stakeholders and who owns the railroad tracks, they can't exactly cut those overnight. And so,
Yeah, that's an interesting point there. I had thought about that. Like, yeah, cutting bus service can be as simple as notifying all the operators that would run that route that, hey, you're going to have to bid on a different job. Yours is gone tomorrow morning.
or
So
you're just not
quick,
coming
figure
into
it out.
work ever.
I would hope not that, but yeah, I could see that coming with as much as they were cutting. That would take a significant percentage off the number of needed operators for service.
But yeah, and in either event, with the train services, because Amtrak runs services on there, Conrail, the Conrail Shared Assets, I should say, still has some operations, and I think they run with New Jersey Transit in a couple of places, or they're like that you can interchange with New Jersey Transit on the Northeast Corridor. There's a lot of different things they probably would have to do to cut regional rail. And like again, when you're cutting train services, that's the point where you can't come back. That's the point where like people will start to move.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I
Like
think
the
I think to a certain degree, the train services could be cut pretty quickly. I mean, you just tell those trains not to run. Everybody else,
Yeah.
freight operators and Amtrak could still go through. They just wouldn't be dodging in and out of regional rail services.
Well, I think it was more that like they're leasing some of the tracks from Amtrak, like they're leasing spaces on the Northeast Corridor.
Oh,
And
yeah, and they don't
so
wanna just pay for nothing.
there may be a contractual obligation there. There may be some other stuff. I maybe the train drivers unions required a longer stepped down cut period. If again, if you work for SEPTA or if you have any knowledge on this, please email us at sy whatever it is .gmail.com.
How
But
rude. I'm gonna make a label for you 2 and mail it to you.
hold on. SYDDOYWTW at gmail.com, because I have the the show notes open, and I was just reading it. You can
Again, I
just
would
read
like
the
to do
title of
my regular episode, apology for choosing something so complicated.
but um going on with this, basically, the order that came down from the judge is essentially that SEPTA is going to have to keep running. I'm not 110% certain where the money is coming from. I think it might be their capex or whatever whatever that they need for like capital expenditures is basically being used to run the trains now and the buses. I don't know how that's going to work out. I have no idea what this means for the future of SEPTA. Hopefully I don't see a news article in like 3 weeks that says SEPTA has no money.
That it seems like that's what it's going to come down to because the judge also ruled that the fare increases could still continue, but the fare increases are not going to
Cover it.
to
No.
cover this. That's really one of the key features of public transit is that you never get all the money back from the fare box, but we continue to fund it anyway, get what we can from the fare box, but keep it running because it's a public service. So where's the other, I don't know, 70% of this money going to come from? I think you're right in that it's capital expenditure. Any projects they had are now on pause and it's just going to paychecks to the operators and the maintenance and the support staff.
Yeah, and I'm not certain how long this can last. I'm not certain what that's going to do in the long or short term. So we'll have to keep an ear to the ground and hear what happens.
We are getting into weird times transit wise.
Yeah, we're getting into weird times for heavy rail wise too. If we go into our next slide, uh, if we go into our next slide, so I know that this is a lot of really small text on the side of the screen. This is just a screenshot. You're not to illustrate what I'm talking about. Don't bother trying to strain your eyes to read it. Essentially, the American Association of Railroading has decided to approach the DOT with some ideas for reducing regulatory burdens, things that they consider onerous, like inspecting freight cars
Yeah.
and inspecting and having to employ inspectors and impay and not being able to hump hazmat cars
So the the wild one
and
about
a
this
shitload of
is
other
that,
things too.
oh, if you're not aware, the AAR, the American Association of Railroads, is a conglomerate of basically the businesses that run railroads. So of course they're going to be extremely biased and say we don't want to do these things that cost us money. Safety doesn't save money. It doesn't save money this quarter as long as we don't have another East Palestine, Ohio in this quarter. And
Don't worry, they will.
it we're already seeing just a little bit of it. Like right now, Carmen are not required to inspect every single car that comes through a yard like they did previously. Now most of the onus of car inspection actually goes onto the train crews themselves. Before they move any car, it doesn't matter if it's a 5-car local train or a 15,000-foot intermodal train. In theory, that is supposed to be inspected on foot. It cannot be done from a vehicle by the conductor or a brakeman or a utility man, somebody that's attached to that train crew.
So
And
basically
it,
you.
yeah, like I'm supposed to walk up and down both sides of every single car that I pick up. And until very recently, I was on a job that would regularly handle trains that are more than a mile long. And I had a fun discussion with my boss about it once when he was approached me and was trying to figure out if there was something operations wise that could be done to speed up the uh the way that the timeline on which that train moved because it took quite a while to get it all built up, having to wait on several other trains to do work beforehand. And I said that getting it built up sooner probably wasn't going to happen. That was too much of a chance. The best I could do was delay it. And I said that I could actually do a more thorough inspection of all of these cars because I have previous experience as a carman, and I told him it's like I can start going through and like checking bearings, pedestal liners, bolsters, the bowls. I can really start doing more than just looking at, does the handbrake work? Is it connected? Are the grab irons and the ladders there, and do the wheels look like they're not about to explode into a million pieces? And he looked at me and he said, that's not something we need. And I made a smart ass remark about, well, this is how we used to do it when we had Carmen. So what's the issue with me doing it? And apparently that wasn't the right answer. But
That's
this lack of inspections is how we get things like I went to pick up a car from a very large railroad that shall not be named. And one of their employees that was helping me build the train gave me a heads up and said, hey, the very first car in this track that you're picking up needs to be bad ordered. And nobody will believe me. But if I get somebody else saying it too, uh, I bet that we can actually get it bad ordered and kicked out of your train. And I said, oh, well, what's wrong with it? And he said, it has no brakes. And I asked him, oh, you mean the brakes aren't working? What you do? Did you see it on a brake test or something? He goes, no, all the brakes are gone. So I walked up to that car and I walked around it, and somehow that car had made it all the way to Texas with no brake shoes. And it was a loaded hazardous material tank car.
you should have kicked it just to see what happened.
Yeah, but that's against my company rules. I could have done it per the rules of the very, very big railroad that owns that yard, but my company rules say that I can't do that, and that would have gotten me in way more trouble.
Yeah, there's just a toxic waste spill in downtown Dallas.
It's close enough. I mean, maybe we could do Texas a little bit of a favor and wipe Dallas off the map.
Like the movie Atomic Train. Remember that one?
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh god, we should do an episode about freight railroads and just how like they run trains like this all the time and always have.
We can't do that one until I retire, so that
Well, I've got like
I
the
can
one
present evidence that I can't present right now.
I've got the one Union Pacific story that I love where with the train that had no brakes on any of its cars and ran
I
away
st-
down the
I do still want to talk about that one.
that one we might have to do at some point.
Speaking of the
But
Union Pacific,
speaking of the
um,
Union Pacific, we go to the
they're
next one.
they're getting kind
Oh,
of chuddy.
hi Jim Vina. You really want this NS merger to go through, don't
This is
you?
a level of brown nosing that I've never seen. Jim Vina, the CEO of the Union Pacific, is urging Donald Trump to send out troops, National Guard troops, to several cities, but I think his biggest emphasis was on Memphis, St. Louis, and Chicago, which coincidentally enough are cities in which the Union Pacific has the highest rate of thefts from
Well,
intermodal trains.
the Memphis one was more that he used to be the CEO of FedEx, and apparently FedEx would not let him walk around downtown Memphis. They made him ride in like a bulletproof car.
What? Oh,
That's
I
what he
hadn't heard
said.
that
I
one.
was reading the article that I got this photograph from, which looks like it's digitally manipulated, but I guess Trump's smile is just that wide.
I
But
think the thing that looks weird to me, like it looks just there's so many different colors in here that it looks like an AI generated image, and the AI
it
tried
looks
too hard to make it look cheerful.
it looks fake. It really does. Also, I do love that you can see the Diet Coke button. The red
Wait,
button on
can
that.
you?
I believe it's that oblong wooden box with the red button at the end of it
Oh my
on the
god.
on the right by the
I
phone.
thought that was a myth.
No, he had it. He has it, I
God,
think.
of course it's back.
But also the 7,000 pictures on that desk behind him, none of which you can see.
I like the two Cisco phones right up top there.
I think that's just there. Like that's just more of the president has 3 to 5 phones on his desk at any given time.
Well, shit. How long ago was the hotline straight
Moscow,
to
not
the
long.
Moscow taken out?
I
Can't
don't know
remember
when
the
it was
name of that
taken out.
building.
The Kremlin.
The Kremlin. Oh, I was right. I thought that was wrong. But ever since they took that phone out, since that was a specific direct line, I mean, do you really need two phones? What are you going to do? Answer both at once?
So, I think that one of them is the secure line.
He's the
I th-
president. How are they not both secure lines? Like, is one for discussing war plans and the other for calling Papa John's? What happens if you
Maybe.
mix them up?
I I couldn't begin to tell you. I don't no, I don't know, but, like, I believe that even going back to, like, Obama and things like that, there have been pictures of multiple phones on the president's desk.
Okay, okay, fine. He'll get it.
If you have presidential desk phone autism, please email us at syddowywtw@gmail.com.
And even if
If
you don't want to tell us about what it's all set up as, like you just can't be arsed out to type it all out. Can you just write us in anyway and let us know that you exist? Because I'm deathly curious.
And also, please don't War Thunder Forum us. Please don't give us any classified information because I won't know that it's not that it's classified, and I will read it aloud, and they will send me to El Salvador. So I need desperately not for that to happen. But
Mm, I'm gonna say send it because I'm curious. I mean, I'm for my own protection. I'm going to have to tell somebody that I got this, but it's gonna be after I go through it all.
yeah, so
All right. Enough with
enough
creepy Jim Vina. I
enough
get
with
his
Jim
mug
V.
off my screen.
Great, we get to look at an even more ghoulish man.
Oh,
So
this fight another reality star politician.
okay, so Sean Duffy, who is a bootlicking toady and excessively tanned and looks fake, um, okay, has been threatening the city of Charlotte. Which, to give you some background, last month, Irina Zarutska, a Ukrainian refugee to the United States who had settled in Charlotte, got on board a CATS Blue Line light rail train and then was promptly stabbed to death in what really is like almost a slaying by another passenger who the article names 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown, who, for reasons that probably make sense only to himself, pulled out a knife and stabbed her 4 times in the neck, and killed her, which is terrible. Unfortunately for everybody involved, um, a couple of things then happened. First of all, DeCarlos Brown is black and Irina Zarutska is pretty white and blonde. So naturally, we've got to get that involved. But also, Cats released the video of the stabbing with just the moment of the stabbing taken out. So this went viral as the scary black man killing a young white woman, which that's not new. That's always happened in the news. But because Donald Trump is trying to extinguish woke in all of its forms, whether or not it actually exists or not, um, he has decided to sick bootlicking toady Sean Duffy on Charlotte area transit system for failing to protect this woman for on the train, despite the fact that there's not really a way to protect someone against an instance like this because otherwise you're going to be ending up putting a TSA level security on every bus and train stop in the country. Um, who the the
I
response
I
from
I
the
don't
res-
get how they put this on cats.
they don't. This is to own the libs because Charlotte is a large city in the South, which means that it is fairly liberal
Yeah, it's a
and
blue city in a sea of red, probably just
in a
like
se-
every other large city in the South.
and
Which
so they need to own the libs, and so they're doing this. What's even worse is that Cats actually was offering protection. This was, I guess, a two-car train, like two light rail vehicles coupled together, and there were police officers in the front of the train. This was just the back of the train. Um,
oh, I saw this shit all the time on Dart. Two cops they stick together and they would stand right behind me where it's like I can see what's going on behind me. I can give you a shout if I need something up here. Can you please go into the lawless wild wild west that is the back car, please? No, you're just gonna stand here. All right.
and that's something that's beyond the scope of this podcast is like trying to figure out policing skills. But in any event, uh, basically, this is also tying into the general push to mark all blue cities as lawless wastelands. In the bottom corner, I have a headline from the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. I can't remember which one, but basically, crime has been down on the New York City subway this year to some of its lowest levels in decades. And Sean Duffy went out and called the um, New York City subway a crime-ridden hellhole, while Kathy Hochul was like looking at him like, "Bitch, what?"
I
And so
yeah, it's mental gymnastics. And
it
let's make this extremely clear. I'll say it on record. This is not a public transit issue. This is a societal issue. This is a direct result of the the cuts in funding towards mental health that was made available to the public. And this started during the Reagan administration and it has gotten worse since then.
I was gonna say that it was basically. I mean, I don't pretend to know what went on inside this guy's head. I'm willing to bet that he was mentally unwell, and it turned into violence because crazy people are unfortunately crazy, and so sometimes that manifests itself in pissing in the street, and other times that's stabbing someone to death. And
It
so
if there was a single payer system in which this man could have at some point before his mental illness escalated to this level, if he could have walked into a hospital and just said, I need help and gotten that help without the receptionist going, all right, well, can we have your insurance info? Oh, you don't have it? All right, get out of here. Are you going to hurt somebody right now? No? Okay, get out of here. This wouldn't have happened. I can guarantee that.
yeah, no, that's basically what it is, that we don't have mental health care in this country. And you'll notice this because lack of mental health care in this country, we have been ignoring a lot of other crime in other cities that might not fit this narrative, like the fact that there was a school shooting. There have been a couple school shootings since this happened. There have been a couple of other things, and not much has been said at the federal level. And it mental gymnastics again, like a couple months ago, a pair of Democratic lawmakers in and one of their spouses and their dog in Minnesota were killed by a guy who identified as a pro-life conservative, uh, shot and killed these people. And there was big news for about 3 days, and then nobody cared. And as opposed to this, Trump is calling for DeCarlos Brown to get the death penalty and federal charges right after posting on Truth Social an image of like, Chicago will know what war is because he just changed the name of the fucking Department of Defense to the Department of War, despite not having legal authority to do that. I'm not certain if that's a true thing or not, but I will continue to call it the Department of the Defense because DOD sounds better than DOW, because you can't call it Dow because that's a chemical company.
It it's always going to be the Department of Defense. It's always going to be the Gulf of Mexico, and Pluto is still a planet. All right. This is what
Uh-huh.
we grew up with, and that's how it's going to stay in my mind forever.
Yes. And now, in for my segue into the next slide, Trump again is pushing for federal charges and death penalty for the attacker. Surely political calls for violence on a national scale can cause no problems. Oh no. So
Mm.
okay. So I feel that Zach and I have different levels of intensity on this. So
Uh,
I'm gonna go.
I hear ELO's Mr. Blue Sky playing in my head right now.
I'm
That
gonna
jaunty intro. Good morning. Today's forecast calls for blue skies.
I'm gonna go first because I want to just sort of get a more like calm
Yeah, yeah.
opinion, and then
I'm hands off.
I'm gonna let Zach go wild for a moment after that. So, Charlie Kirk was a right wing influencer who founded the campus youth organization Turning Point USA. My older brother David described it as basically he would be the guy who would start the Hitler Youth, and which is probably not wrong. Um, uh, Charlie Kirk is a very right wing, small c conservative podcaster, poster, everything. He does a lot of debates that basically were like change my view, that sort of thing, and then he never did change his view because his entire thing was owning the libs. Before owning the libs was a thing, he actually started this back in like 2013, 2014-ish. Um, I've never been particularly familiar with this particular brand of right-wing extremism because I just wasn't. Any positive feelings I may have ever had for Turning Point USA sort of dissolved when at Kent State, where I went to school, I met the head of the Kent State chapter of Turning Point USA, which was the gun girl, if you remember her. The girl who walked around with her with an AR-15 for her graduation photos and later led an open carry walk through Kent State's campus. Remember, Kent State had a massacre on campus in 1970. But in any event, I met her, and in her eyes was the sort of malicious intelligence that you only see inside Sharks and Tucker Carlson. And I didn't like looking at that now, and I didn't like looking at that then. And so I've never viewed these people as someone whose beliefs I should particularly pay any attention to. But apparently, Charlie Kirk has gone significantly more and more and more and more right-wing until eventually it could be viewed that this is now almost fascist. I don't exactly know. I literally have never listened to a word this guy said until I saw the video on Twitter where someone asked him a question about mass shooters. There was a brief back and forth. The question was then posed to him, how many mass shootings have there been in the same period of time? He says, including gang violence, and then somebody scoops out his carotid artery at 200 yards with a 30-06 hunting rifle. Because on the 10th of September at Utah Valley University in Orem, he was assassinated. This has proven to be an extremely divisive issue in the U.S. because there are some people who are saying that this is a tragedy. That includes the President of the United States. There are some people who think that political violence should be condemned, like a lot of mainstream Democrats and mainstream media personalities. And then there are some people, like my eagerly waiting host of this podcast, who think this is the funniest thing they've ever heard. And my thoughts on this are more on the line that Charlie Kirk has been pushing for politically divisive statements for over a decade now. He said in 2023, it's worth to have a cost of some gun deaths every single year so we can have the Second Amendment. And more to the point, he was not exactly he was advocating for the death of, he advocated for the death or like at least reduction in humanity of various people on the margins of society, including minorities, LGBTQ, the mentally ill, the homeless, generally. And so his death has been celebrated in some sections, which is a way to learn that you do not have universal appeal. And so I don't give a shit that he was killed. The only opinion that I have is that I might be more worried that he'll do more danger now as a martyr. But considering that he was very closely intertwined with the inner circle of Donald Trump, I think that it may be a harm reduction. I don't know. I don't actually, not certain that I care one way or the other, but he is now, there has been a bill put forth in Congress by certified crazy person Nancy Mace to have him lie in state in Congress, which is insane because, I should say again, the two Democratic members of the Minnesota State Senate who were killed last month got lying in state in the Minnesota State Capitol, not the U.S. Capitol. And so this is where we are now. Now for our more jubilant correspondent, Zach, please tell me exactly what you think, because I would love to hear this.
So Joe touched on a specific quote from Charlie Kirk that I am just going to lead it with because it is apparently so powerful that it will get certain news hosts fired from their job. And this is a direct quote from Charlie Kirk. I think it's worth it to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. This man was pushing, was trying to push this nation back about 200 years in terms of civil rights. And I am not one to celebrate somebody's death, but I absolutely feel better knowing that this smug asshole who had no respect for anybody that was not a white Anglo Saxon Protestant is gone. He can no longer push his ugly ideology onto everybody else. And this is exactly what he would have wanted. He died so that we can have our guns. It's I
Charlie Kirk, who praises school shootings, killed in a school shooting.
yes, that's exactly it. This is the man who believes that women belong believed, I'm sorry, have to use the past tense now. He believed that women belong barefoot and in the kitchen pregnant and that they need to he fucking told Taylor Swift to submit to her man to be a good wife, and I cannot understand that. I I think my general attitude towards this can be best summed up by the wonderful post from a something awful forums user named Solar Nativity, who simply made a post that said, "Congratulations to everyone who woke up this morning in a world where Charlie Kirk didn't." You know, this world is still messed up, but I think it is slightly better now that this man is gone. And
Yeah,
I am happy about that. Unfortunately, I am also worried about how quickly Charlie Kirk is becoming a martyr to the cause. And as the days go by and we learn more about what happened and Tyler Robinson, the man who shot allegedly shot Charlie Kirk, um, we're getting into we're seeing a lot of manipulation happen real time. We're getting so many conflicting reports about who Tyler Robinson is, what he believed, even who he lived with. There's suspicion that he was living with a roommate who was actually his transgender lover. I don't
I
know if
had
this person was
I
actually his lover, if it was transgender man or woman. I don't know either way. I don't want to be disrespectful to them, but I don't even know if any of that is true, but we keep seeing the manipulation of the information coming out to try to sway us towards this was a an insane left-wing killer that shows that they just can't be trusted, or this was a guy who just was who actually was right leaning that got so tired of this extreme, like this was too extreme even for him as a right leaner, that
I am
it's
not
interesting.
certain. So far, what I've heard from like major media outlets like the New York Times is that maybe he was like, what I almost think happened is this guy was a Mormon who lived in Utah, because obviously he's a Mormon who lived in Utah. Um, Went off to school,
For a month.
got he went off to like then an electrical engineering degree or
He was
something.
in there longer, but he went
But
to, I think, Utah
yeah,
State for
yeah,
a
Utah
month.
State. And then, but whatever happened, I think he started to like hang out more online, because if the roommate exists, or if the friend exists, there was a post made by the Wall Street Journal about like how the roommate was showing the FBI like Discord chats. And as someone who is intimately familiar with what sort of Discord chats exist on Discord and Discord servers in general, there's I'm fairly certain that liberalism was something this guy was not unfamiliar with, or left-wing opinions.
Oh, definitely.
Also going off of the Wall Street Journal, the fact that the bullets may I'm sorry, the New York Times had this. The New York Times had that the bullets were inscribed with many different slogans, including Bella Ciao, which I believe is an anti-fascist song made in Italy, Hey Fascist Catch, And my personal favorite, notices bulge, oh whoa, what's this?
Oh, that
Which
was your favorite? Mine was, "If you're reading this, you're gay, LMAO." 'Cause
uh
that was, like, peak high school humor right there that I know
the
I shouldn't laugh at, but it
the
just tickles a stupid part of my brain.
the oh whoa one is just like, okay, this person is on the if
Just
I didn't
if you write those words down with an ink on some material, whether it
no,
be
I think they were
paper or a bullet
engraved.
casing, oh, if it's even worse if you take the time to engrave it. Man, you are so chronically online that it's an
I
issue.
I was going to say, like, that by itself tells me so much about who this guy was, which is, like, just like you took the time to engrave that into a bullet and shot it's like, "Yeah, sure, no, I believe this." I believe
What
literally
whatever
that
Tyler Robinson believes, he believes in it very strongly, which I think we are unfortunately going to see more of. We have
yeah,
bred a very violent culture, and if fascists are going to get louder and louder voices and bigger platforms, there is going to be pushback.
yeah.
I
Which
can't
actually
say I endorse it, but I also can't say that I condone it either.
I don't
You're
I'm in
talk shit, get hit, dude.
my opinions on this, and I forgot to say this earlier, was basically if we flip the roles around completely, like, let's say that there was a really prominent left-wing liberal sort of individual, would you consider, like who would be, like, a left-wing version of Charlie Kirk? Like, Zohran Mandami, perhaps? Or maybe
Probably.
AOC?
That would yeah,
Like,
probably
imagine.
AOC. I would say AOC just because she's a woman and so many people
Well,
disregard her opinion because of that.
I was trying to more have it be like an exact match, but imagine if Zohran Mandami, who for future listeners is as of current time running for mayor of New York City under a fairly liberal left wing platform, or AOC, who is a sitting U.S. Congressperson who has an extremely left wing, almost socialist platform, also from New York City. If either of them had been giving a talk, and some deranged right wing individual had done everything the exact same and shot them from 200 yards with a hunting rifle, and it was caught on video the exact same way that Charlie Kirk was, like everything being equal, no bad faith arguments here, everything being equal, I think that not only would the right wing think that it was funny, I think that Charlie Kirk personally would have laughed at it. And so I'm
Charlie Kirk would say something like, "This is why we have Second Amendment rights so that we can silence those."
I'm not giving him any sympathy except for, damn, that sucks, bro. Uh, because I know that this would not be in any way, shape, or form um, reciprocated the other way around. And
Yeah.
I know, and so
This
that's like,
hypothetical killer in the situation you're speaking of would not have legislators calling for the death penalty before they even knew the killer's identity.
yes. And more to the point, again, going to what I've said now three times, last 2 months ago, 3 months ago now, two Minnesota state legislators both of their spouses and one of their dogs were shot. Everyone except one of the spouses died. And this was big news. And it was by a conservative person who was specifically targeting them for their pro choice agenda. And this was big news for like a couple of days, maybe a week. And there's no death penalty push, there's no massive thing, nobody was making them lie in state in the fucking US Capitol dome, which I hope to god that doesn't go through, but Mike Johnson did not have to put down a fucking revolt in the middle of the Congress floor
Yeah.
because of that, and here it did. So I going back to what you said, Zach, I think the only thing that we really have to worry about with Charlie Kirk is I'm concerned that he'll be able to do more damage as a martyr than he would be as a person. But even then, he introduced JD Vance to Trump. So how much worse could it be now that he's dead?
It this is going to be a strong tool for the right to condemn anybody that leans slightly to the left.
I also don't think this is gonna be the last time this happens. I don't know
No,
which si
absolutely not.
it might be a right wing shooting a left wing person next time, it might be the other way around. It might be someone who's mentally unwell that gets picked up either way, like a lot of the shooters that's happened, like, the guy that shot Trump a couple last year. Uh,
I okay. So while I was trying to troubleshoot Zencaster shit in the bed on me, did you talk about the Jezebel article at all?
no, I did
Okay.
not.
This was probably my favorite part of the whole situation.
Yes, it
Uh,
was.
2 days before Charlie Kirk was shot, Jezebel posted an article titled "We Paid Some Etchy Witches to Curse Charlie Kirk." And the article lays out how this guy found out that you can buy curses from witches on Etsy.
Which I've known
And
about for some time, but it's
oh, I've
really
seen it too. And this guy went through and explained how he
well,
chose
it's
what he
Jezebel, wouldn't it have
did.
been some girl?
It may have been this person went through and explained how they chose who they did, and
It
how
cost
they
$8.
$8 to get a curse put on Charlie Kirk, and he did specific. They did specifically note that they weren't looking for death. They were looking for like they wanted his thumb to get too big to tweet. They wanted one of his socks to always be sliding down, just stuff like that. That was
And him to
inconvenient.
shit his pants.
Yeah, and the the witch that performed this
They
ritual to get
hired
this curse
several,
put
I
on.
believe.
The one in particular that they focused on, that provided proof that it had been that the curse had been or the ritual had been performed, also said that it would take approximately 2 to 3 weeks to manifest, and the timeline given in that article placed it right at 2.5 to 3 weeks before Charlie Kirk was shot, which
Yes.
is the funniest fucking coincidence I have ever seen.
Yes. This article
And
has now been taken down
it
because
has been
Jezebel is a
taken
bunch of
down at the
cowards.
advice of Jezebel's lawyers, which is so hilarious to me that they can't feel like they can publish that
What
because who's
what
gonna how is anybody gonna be able to take them to court and say like, oh yeah, you caused Charlie Kirk's death? Fuck you,
what
put the
else I
article
find
back up.
what else I find really funny is that apparently, a fan of the Seattle Mariners did the same thing to help them, bought a blessing from a witch on Etsy to make, the Mariners stop losing, and at the exact same time that Jezebel was paying Etsy witches, and it worked, apparently. The Mariners have been on, like, a five-game winning streak.
I mean, have we been wrong this whole time? Do we all need to become Wiccan?
I'm thinking that maybe for, like, 2 or 3 days, the global chakras aligned or the moons were in alignment or whatever, and
Dude, fucking everything lined up for this one.
so for, like, 3 days, magic was real. For 3 days. For 3 days, magic was real, and it worked, and now it's gone again, and we have to
Oh
wait
my
for the
god.
next, like, solar alignment of whatever, ver you know, whatever is in retrograde.
This is going to be like the weirdest coincidence of astrologers and astronomers getting together to actually study planetary motion and its impact on human life. And this is going to be going on for forever.
I just
They're going to
can't
be
wait for
trying to
the
figure out the correlation.
I just can't wait for the update to John Boyes' seminal work, History of the Seattle Mariners, to have to include that.
Oh yeah, I want to hear his take on that.
But, yeah, this is not transit news, but this is gonna be relevant for a while, so I figured we should include this. Um, anyways, now if we go on to this is the end of the news, but before we go on to the meat of this article, I do have a couple addendum for for episode 9. So if we go to the
This
next
is
slide.
another amazing coincidence.
So, first of all, I did mention that in the South African cruise market, a ship called the Betsy Ross was there, and Zach asked me a question about what it was, and I did not have a great deal of information at that moment. So I went back and looked it up, and the Betsy Ross was not owned by an American. It has been alternatively described. It appears to be the American Star Line, which may or may not have existed purely to own this vessel. Um, it is not in any way related with the SS American Star that ran aground off the coast of some island and is still there to this day. Um, this is I have a New York Times article from 1987 that I found, um, that the president of this new cruise line formerly was with Epi Epitoki Lines, which I'm assuming is a misspelling of Epirotiki, the owners of the Oceanos. Um,
Mm,
Also, going through the Wikipedia article for this vessel, because every old cruise ship has its own Wikipedia article. I love that about Wikipedia. The Betsy Ross was in heavily dilapidated condition. It was basically basically after about 1990, it was not seaworthy. It sort of remained as a stationary accommodation vessel for a lot of things, which Zach, do you want to read the top line of the Wikipedia article, like the top, like that paragraph, just to like how insane it is?
The TS Leda was operated by Bergen Line between Britain and Norway as a North Sea ferry for over 20 years from 1953. She was rebuilt in 1981 as a cruise liner and later became an accommodation vessel at a penal colony for terrorists and members of the mafia. In 2002, whilst being broken up, she was boarded by Greenpeace campaigners protesting about conditions in the shipbreaking industry.
Yeah,
I
so
have whiplash 6 times over reading that.
that's the average life of a cruise liner back. This is the wild, wild fucking west. But yeah, the Betsy Ross was like disgusting. Apparently, at in its entire time as that name, uh, it was not a good ship. It does not exist anymore. I believe it's just gone. So, more to the point, it was apparently a car ferry before the invention of the ro-ro ship, which makes me think they had to hoist the cars on deck one by one. Like it
I'd
was
be
just
down for that. I'd be down for that as long as I get to ride in a car as it's being picked up.
I don't think they'd let you. But
It's the 50s. Why not?
it's the 70s. There's a lawyer
Okay, it's
now.
this 70s are still pretty wild. It'll be all
Also,
right.
you want to see in this bottom picture, I just noticed this. Talk about good ship names. There's the King Minos next to it. That's a great name in
That's rad.
predictably Greek font. So that's our one addenda. And then here's our second addenda, which this so I mentioned that one of the other ships on the cruising scene in South Africa before the end of apartheid was the Achille Lauro. I didn't really go much into because I thought that the Achille Lauro's main claim to fame was being hijacked by the PLO. As it turns out, this is not the only thing that has happened to the Achille Lauro. The Achille Lauro went through a variety of owners before eventually being bought by a man named Achille Lauro, who turned it into a cruise ship, who continued to operate it. It eventually became the first ship in Star Lauro, which eventually became the second largest cruise line in the world, MSC Cruises. That was the other one that I was thinking of throughout the entirety of the episode the other day. But MSC doesn't do a lot of work in the US. They're a much bigger European thing. Uh, so the Achille, so that's why I didn't really think of them. The Achille Lauro was a beloved vessel on the South African cruise circuit. Apparently, it was a
Mhm.
very pleasant ship. It was a very nice ship, and it apparently wasn't that much of a shitbox right up until the moment that the engine that some form of crankcase failure happened. The engine room caught on fire, and everybody had to bail out off the coast of Somalia while the ship burned to the waterline. Um, Now, this is interesting. We could possibly cover it, but there's not. Again, it was a very successful evacuation. Unlike the Oceanus, a couple people did die because several passengers had basically medical emergencies where they needed their pills for something or they would die. And unfortunately, the ship was so uninhabitable in the interior that they could not be retrieved. A couple of other people died during the evacuation, including one poor fuck who was killed when the case for an inflatable life raft was dropped on him.
Oof.
But notably, who dropped that inflatable lifeboat casing? I hear nobody asking. Well,
No.
it was a member of the ship's entertainment staff.
No.
A man by the name of Moss Hills, because Moss Hills,
No.
his wife Tracy, and magician Robin Boltman all thought that surviving the Oceanos was not going to keep them away from the fucking ocean for a second. And they went on the Laro as staff for multiple years after this, because the Laro sank in like 1995. They were all on board. They helped with the evacuation. Moss Hills,
Moss,
I almost he
I take it all
almost
back. Everybody you saved on the Oceanos is wiped out because you killed that one guy with the life
no.
raft.
Oh, don't say that. He feels bad about it still.
No,
But
I know. I'll bet he does.
he
That's a
he
shitty spot to be in.
he also he went into the ship to try and get one of those passengers medication, and he almost died from smoke inhalation and was unable to get it because like he was that thick already.
I hope that guy never had to work a day in his life after this.
Moss Hills is a cruise director nowadays.
Oh, that's right. I saw
He
that.
has never
That dude should be able to retire on like a Goodwill pension.
Nobody has ever told him don't go back in the water. Don't go back in
Hey
the
man,
water.
have you ever
but-
thought about staying off? Have you ever thought about like getting into trains or something?
He's still there. He's still out. I could not imagine doing. I would just personally develop a fear of boats. But
So we heard that you have bad luck out on the water. If you're looking for a shady and sketchy outfit on a railroad, that's a land-based thing. It can't sink. Nothing ever bad has happened with water and trains. We've got the thing for you. This little place
uh,
is hiring out in the U.S. across the pond.
there's so many that are sketchy operations out there. But in any event, the Achille Lauro did eventually sink from the uncontrolled fires. Um, Notably, it sank in 14,000 feet of water off the coast of Somalia, which is a which is a politically stable country that has never had anything happen with waterborne anything, and so nobody's ever found it because nobody's ever looked.
Nobody has dared to look.
Nobody has dared to look off the coast of Somalia for anything. So,
Nope.
but no, it was apparently a very well regarded ship. Everybody was sad that the Blue Lady sank, but
We ought to take a cruise on one of Moss Hill's ships that he directs now, because
we
I
ought
bet
to
you
we
if
ought to
there's
never.
any ship that is either A, not going to sink because it's not going to get to unsafe conditions, or if it does sink, it's going to be for a reason outside of their control and the evacuation is going to go super smoothly. I feel like that'd be one of Moss Hill's ships.
I feel like I would never ever get on a boat with Moss Hills in my life. I would feel like I'm being targeted by God sitting with him in a kayak.
I like tempting fate sometimes.
I could like just imagine that you're a very superstitious person and you just are sitting there in the lounge for the sailing away party and Moss Hills walks out and he introduces himself and you just sort of look out the window as the scare cards start playing and see the land receding away. It's like dun 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 dun. You're stuck here.
You're in it now, baby.
Yeah, hi, I want the cabin next to the lifeboat. I don't care that there's no cabin next to the lifeboat. I'll sleep in the gym.
Can I sleep on a sleeping bag next to the lifeboat?
Can I sleep in the lifeboat?
All right.
Right. Now we have to go on to the episode. It's
Let's
only
go
been
see
an
what
hour.
railroad Moss Hills could try his
Yeah,
luck on.
today's theme. We have a theme today. And also this is the last
Foamers run a railroad. Oh my god. Keep them away.
this is the last slide with transitions and the theme is don't we it's actually such a thorough theme. We don't have a like modern equivalent of this. We just have no, we didn't learn anything except we did. But
we learned a
we
fair
learned-
bit from this one.
we learned-
There's
no.
no modern equivalent for it because it didn't happen again after this. Not in the railroad.
basically, yeah, not in the railroad. We do have another don't let hobbyists touch anything story at the end of this. But we're gonna. I love how giant and
This
red this text is.
so this is such a prevalent theme in today's episode that earlier today I was out running errands with my wife. She was driving. I was sitting in the passenger seat with a 63-page NTSB report, going through, highlighting it, making notes, and going, "What the fuck? What the fuck? Why would you do that? Why would you do it that way? What do you mean you don't know how to do that?" That finally, my wife just asked me, like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I told her that this was such a poorly run and easily prevented incident that it only happened because these were foamers that wanted to play choo choo, and we foamers ruin everything. And without missing a beat and without even taking her eyes off traffic, she just said, "I thought we'd already established that." Well, we're going to establish it further, damn it.
So indeed we are. Next slide. Next slide. Here we go.
Ooh,
This is the 1995 Gettysburg Railroad boiler explosion, the biggest, most influential disaster that didn't kill a goddamn person.
somehow.
Some
Actually, no, we know how, and we're going to get to that. And it was pure luck that it happened the way that
Yeah,
it did.
I cannot stress enough how much this image on the screen that you're looking at is the luckiest, best outcome, not just for the poor fucks involved in this, but steam railroading in America as a
Mm
whole.
hmm. Mm hmm.
I cannot stress this enough.
Oh, we're going to get into it.
So we're going to go on to the next slide, which that's the last transition you'll see. We didn't have time to put them in. What is a
No, you said
steam
that about the
engine?
last slide.
I forgot I put one in on that one. What is a steam engine?
Fucking
I
rad. That's what it is.
yes. So a steam engine is this is basic primer for anyone who doesn't really have a good working knowledge. Basically, a steam engine is a boiler attached to a steam distribution system. So in this document, in this image in front of you, the fireman who is figure one feeds coal into the fire, which is in the firebox. Alternatively, you can have what's known as an automatic stoker. This is more prevalent in locomotives in the United States and Canada, where coal was automatically driven into the boiler using an auger, into the firebox using an auger, and then distributed by high pressure steam jets. Uh, the burning coal create creates heat, which is then sucked through. This is known as a fire tube boiler, which the hot air and hot gases go through tubes that are inside the boiler that then proceed to boil water that is in a jacket around the fire tubes, and that heats up, goes through the steam dome, which is usually where the throttle body is for the locomotive, and then goes down through steam piping into the cylinders, which then drives the pistons back and forth. Again, this is a highly simplified drawing here, so there's not going to be a lot of the more detailed mechanicals. This is just a basic primer.
The drawing
Um,
of Thomas the Tank Engine is simplified?
what's really funny about this is that they actually have it correctly detailed for an inside cylinder tank engine.
I appreciate that. I noticed that and I appreciated that.
Um, so at which point the pistons drive the valve gear backwards and forwards, which drive the drive wheels through and through the connecting rods. Because Thomas the Tank Engine is an inside cylinder locomotive, there is no external valve gear. So the connecting rods are the only thing that are on the outside, but on a North American style locomotive or any engine that has outside cylinders, the primary the cylinders are outside the locomotive and directly connected to the connecting rods, which move back and forth to distribute power that way. That none of almost none of this is relevant to what happens today, but this is
That's
a
not
very
true.
okay. Most of this we don't need to talk about valve gear and connecting rods today.
Okay.
That's not strictly relevant, but this is a good primer if you may have like a broad idea of how a steam engine works, but not totally. And then obviously after that, the steam and the hot gases from the firebox are exhausted out this funnel and and go into the air as steam and smoke.
I think the most important part of this image that's not directly noted is that the the boiler that is full of water that is surrounding these fire tubes is being heated up to the point where the steam on that upper layer is pressurized. And because it is pressurized, if it releases, it is going to release with a pressure of several atmospheres as it exits wherever it's not supposed to exit.
Yeah, steam locomotives usually run at anywhere between 100 and 200 psi,
Hmm.
which is which doesn't sound like a lot until you think about what a norm until you remember that like your car tire usually runs at 30 to 40.
Yeah.
So, and your car tire makes a big noise if it suddenly pops.
And the
So,
steam locomotive makes a bigger noise if it suddenly pops.
yeah.
Well, I don't know. Not as much as we expected. We'll get into that detail
You could
a little later.
some steam engines make big noise when they go pop. It's usually just that anyone around to hear them dies.
You know what? Actually, yeah. Or they're so far away that they can't be hurt by it.
Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
great great grandfather who died in a boiler explosion, and supposedly that one was heard for about a mile away from the actual site.
Yeah, there's a just basically a pressure vessel exploding is extremely violent. The Boston bombers in 2014, 2012, whenever that was,
In
they used
2012?
they u- they used store-bought pressure cookers and just had the explosive devices inside them, so it magnified the pressure and then exploded. Because
Hmm.
that is a force multiplier like you would not believe.
And you could buy one and have it sitting on your kitchen counter.
Yeah. Which is why you sometimes see photos of people with a giant with their oven range pushed halfway in, and then
All
the hood over their oven like gone.
right.
But anyways, on to the next slide. What is Gettysburg? Gettysburg is a borough in Adams County, Pennsylvania, which is I think what towns are called in Pennsylvania, because of course they would be. Population 7,100, mostly devoted to tourism with some light industry. Why is there tourism? Because in 1863 there was the Battle of Gettysburg during the Civil War. If your dad is like that, you will know so much more about the Battle of Gettysburg than I do, because my dad is not like that.
I did not
So
see these quotes until now. This is beautiful.
I wanted to record them, but they wouldn't let me.
Oh.
But yeah, this I mentioned Gettysburg and they went for 10 minutes. Because they apparently went in the 90s before I was born. There's nothing. It was apparently as hot as it was during the actual um Battle of Gettysburg.
So this was the battle that was so bad that it prompted Lincoln's fourscore and
Yeah.
seven years ago speech.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, yeah, the Gettysburg Address. Uh, this was one of the largest battles the in the war, in the Civil War. It was, if you can see, sort of in the Wikipedia box
Can
here,
I
a
can I go ahead
hundred.
and preface this for the future? This was in the first American Civil War.
Don't put that out there. Don't do that. We don't speak it into being.
Okay,
Magic
okay,
might
okay. It
still
was in
be
the
real.
only it was in the only American Civil War, but if you're listening to this 30 years from now, send us an email at syddowtw at gmail.com and let me know if it's still right or not.
Yeah, please do. Or just find us on whatever the successor to Facebook or Instagram is. We'll hopefully not be dead. But um yeah, like to go into the Wikipedia info box, you can see that there was like 105,000 Union troops alone. The Confederates sent as many as 80,000.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to quote my mom, there's nothing there. It's a field with a few rocks in it and a couple of trees, and it's 104 degrees. These people, what the fuck were they doing? You gotta give them credit. They walked at each other. There's nowhere to go. And then Dad chips in with that there's also a museum there. Then he stops and goes, Pickett's charge. Who would do that? It was worse than the Light Brigade. You've got to give them credit for courage, not brains. And I would like to
And
say this was a condensed quote. They went on for some time.
and this was why the American Civil War was the last gentleman's war, where you lined up and shot at each other.
Yeah. Because this is just a fucking appalling.
So what did we do? We decided to build a whole culture around Gettysburg.
Yeah, the Gettysburg was a Gettysburg as a whole, like it's been a tourist site literally since the battle ended.
I would say
Um
even before that, because weren't there people watching as it
I
happened?
I mean this seriously, I don't know. I am not a scholar of the Civil War. I I was being serious with that joke at the beginning. My
Pause the
dad is
pause the
is
recording and go ask your dad.
my my dad is not like that. And so if your dad is, you'll know infinitely more.
Oh my god, you're gonna make me open a new tab, aren't you? Were
Also, I don't
there people watching the Battle of Gettysburg? Mm. Oh no, I was wrong. This one didn't have observers.
but but yeah, basically Gettysburg has been a huge tourist attraction. There was an electric street railway that ran up to and through the national park that's there up until the 1940s. There were It's been part of the National Park Service since as far as it exists. Basically, it's been one of these fields of honor for forever. So, it's been a thing. It's been a huge thing. If you are not American, I promise you that you will not understand the level of mania about this place. It's like Flanders Fields if you're European,
Oh yeah, that's a good comparison.
or maybe like the Somme or Passchendaele, something like that. Like basically a lot of guys died here in a mostly idiotic engagement.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, that's sort of the preface. This What is Gettysburg? Why are we here? It's because it's been a thing. It's been a thing longer than it hasn't been a thing at this stage. So, you know, if you see it, the last little bit of the thing on Gettysburg, industry, Battle of Gettysburg reenactment.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of Gettysburg's economy. So it's always been a tourist town. So we go on to the next slide. What is the Gettysburg Railroad? So I just want to say I just put this in here and I was going to be like, okay, cool, there was a railroad here. And then I started clicking on link after link after link because I discovered that the Pennsylvania Railroad autism had infected Wikipedia. So
Yep.
there was like 4 different almost indistinguishable Wikipedia pages here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was originally the Gettysburg and Harrisburg Railroad, which was built in 1882 to connect to the Cumberland Valley Railroad, which would connect Gettysburg to the main line of public works, which I'm really ashamed to say I still don't have a full idea of what the main line of public works is. I'm assuming that's the Pennsylvania Railroad main line. But
It's got to be something major.
I've heard it
I
talked
want to
about
say this was
enough.
like a municipal or state-owned railroad.
If you are Justin Rosniak and you want to tell us what the Pennsylvania main line of public works is, please email us at syddowtw@gmail.com, please. Because I know he knows. In any
I'm
event,
sorry.
I this is a great bit. I like this bit. Especially that like I have to get quieter and turn away to read it on my other monitor.
Fuck
Um
you.
Anyways, it became a subsidiary of the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad in 1891 after being merged with the South Mountain Railway, which again is a railway that has its own Wikipedia page, despite the fact that it went from nowhere to fucking nowhere. Um, I
Went
don't
from
know.
armpit Pennsylvania to asshole Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh, maybe with a stop in Mechanicsburg, I don't know, but, um, it it was a division of the Reading until Conrail, basically. So from, like, 1891 to 1976, notably during the 1913 Gettysburg reunion, it briefly became the busiest railway in the country, for a week because they had, like, almost 50 or 60,000 people show up for that, if not 80,000, and the Gettysburg Railway had to massively scale up its infrastructure. Like, they had to double track huge portions of the line. They had to rent signals from Union Switch and Signal to run block signals
Oh, that's
during
wild.
this. Yeah, they did. I read an article ages ago. I could not find it, but basically they rented them for the occasion. They performed perfectly, and then they sent them back because they did not need them uh, ever again. Um, Following the form, and then this continued on until 1976. You know, passenger operations were ended in like 1942. Um, you know, the electric railway that ran around here was briefly turned into a I think it's the bit that goes up to Pine Grove, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
That was briefly a division of the railway after they got rid of the interurban cars. That was abandoned in the 1940s as well. Um, the Reading gets further and further into financial disrepair because it's the 1960s and 1970s, and you're a Northeastern Freight Railroad. Um, uh, so basically, with the formation of Conrail in 1976, uh, I've been unable to figure out because Wikipedia articles were conflicting and I couldn't find anything out of Wikipedia. Either the Gettys the Gettysburg Railroad, the line that would become the Gettysburg Railroad, either briefly became part of Conrail and was immediately sold off to the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation in October of 1976, or defaulted to PennDOT and was not even included in the Conrail merger. I don't know which one it is. I'm inclined to believe that it was technically on Conrail's books for a couple of months before PennDOT bought it at like a nominal sum. Um, in order to continue there being rail service, it was quickly sold again to the Blairsville and Indiana Railroad, which, despite its name, was based out of Pennsylvania. No, out of Blairsville, Pennsylvania, to be specific, which was owned by Sloan Cornell. More on him later. It operated as the Gettysburg Railroad until 1996 with the reporting mark GETY. It then operated then sometime after 1996 for reasons that we will get into in just a moment. It operated as a Rail America subsidiary called the Gettysburg Railroad from 1996 to 2001, and is now currently with the reporting mark GBRY, and then currently is the Gettysburg and Northern, which is a Pioneer Lines railroad with the reporting mark of GET. So I don't have, and so that's basically it. I would also like to point out that the image on the lower right of the screen is not the official Gettysburg Railroad logo. This is what a Wikipedia user made in order to that resembles the logo on the tenders of the steam engines. So
Oh, I missed that bit.
I actually had to go into like the like metadata for the Wikipedia image, and he's like, yeah, this is what it looked like. But I'm certain they didn't actually have a logo. They probably just had a word mark. So it's not like it matters. That's the
So I
furthest thing from mattering.
I thought it was a little ridiculous that uh it was sold to the Blairsville and Indiana Railroad, and I thought this was going to be another case of a railroad not actually reaching one or more of the places that it names. But actually, this one actually turns out to be a little more plausible because Indiana is also a city in Pennsylvania.
Yes, which
Which, oh, what thing were you going to point out?
I in one of the WTYP episodes where they were talking about higher education, they pointed this out, and it kills me every time. There is an Indiana University of Pennsylvania in the
There
UPenn
is,
system.
and do you know what else it has?
No.
That I have to look into to find out if there's any relation. It is home that the Indiana University of Pennsylvania is home to the Kovalchik Convention and Athletic Complex. The Kovalchik family is who bought the East Broadtop Railroad to scrap it and then turned it into a museum.
Fascinating. I bet that's related.
Also, Indiana, Pennsylvania is home to a neighborhood called the Chevy Chase Heights.
Well, Chevy Chase is a fairly common name for places. There's one like that in DC. It's a neighborhood of DC.
Okay, that's a whole sidebar we can go down. I did
Yeah.
not know this. I'm gonna have to educate myself on this later. I just saw Chevy Chase and locked it on that.
Yeah, I think Chevy Chase is in Maryland. So yeah. But anyways, onwards to the next slide. Now we have to ask ourselves, what is Canadian Pacific's 1278?
That is
So,
a potentially good looking steam locomotive if it was maintained properly.
yes.
That
So,
is a perfect tourist railroad size locomotive.
yeah, so it is a 1948 built Canadian Pacific class G5D. D is in not capitalized. It's a 462 Pacific, which for those who don't know white notation means that it has 4 lead wheels, 6 drive wheels and 2 trailing wheels. Um, Engine comes with an automatic stoker, and it served for 12 years in service with Canadian Pacific until 1960. It sat idle for 5 years after that and was purchased in 1965 by F. Nelson Blount, who is a very legendary figure in the steam preservation circles because he was, I should say, F. Nelson Blount was a seafood millionaire. His family owned a huge frozen seafood processor. He had millions of dollars in the bank. He was a huge foamer. So he bought a shitload of steam locomotives that were being retired and decided to preserve them in Bellows Falls, Vermont, as as an organization that you might have heard of called Steamtown USA. Um, he ran many of these engines in tourist service in the Vermont area, or he loaned them out to other organizations. So the 1278 was bought by Blount in 1965. He did some work on it to get it running after its 5-year hibernation, added an Alesco feedwater heater, specifically a bundle type, above the smoke box, which is not usually what it looks like. It usually it looks good, but the class G5D did not have that in normal operation. And then the 1278 was renumbered to 127. He wanted to renumber all of his G5Ds because he had 3 of them, and
Of course
it
he
did
did.
not. And he wanted to renumber them. Only the 1278 did get renumbered to 127. That's not really relevant. Um, it operated several excursions um, run by enemy of the podcast Ross Rowland, up to and including one in 1970, which was supposed to be run by 2 other steam engines, both of which developed dying bitch disease and could not be run. So instead, Ross Rowland got 127 or 1278 and Strasburg Railroad 90, which I didn't know about until I was reading it. And apparently, dying bitch disease was contagious. Both of these engines had major issues happen to them. I don't remember what happened to 1278, but I think it derailed at one point. 90, apparently one of its tender trucks disassembled itself
Oh,
in motion and derailed the fuck out of the thing.
I'm pretty sure that's not supposed to happen.
No. So anyways, they did it again the next year and nothing happened. But just an interesting thing. At that point, the Cadillac and Lake City Railroad in Michigan needed it because their engine had developed some form of issue. And also, as an aside, the further you get into this locomotive's history, the more and more individual steam locomotives with Wikipedia pages gets larger and larger. Um, to the point where the Cadillac and Lake City Railroad, their locomotive is now known as Polson Logging Number 2, which is
Oh,
currently shedmates with the Daylight Limited out in Oregon. Like,
oh,
basically, if these steam engines were people, like in Thomas the Tank Engine, these would all be like A and B list actors, is the equivalent. Like these are the faces of steam railroading, even to this day. Like this is it. These are them.
As
And
much as F. Nelson Blount messed up in several ways, the fact that he bought so many of these locomotives and had them around is the reason why they're still around, even if they're only on static display.
yeah, and like F. Nelson Blount, like a lot of great stories out of Steamtown. Like he got um Union Pacific approached him, would you like a big boy, a Challenger, and a business car? And he looked around and was like, fuck, I don't have the space for this. He took 4012 and they couldn't, and the Challenger, I think, got cut up because
Oh,
they didn't. That's why Steamtown nowadays has a big boy because they just offered it to him.
I always wondered about that.
Um, in any of it's too big to ever run again because they couldn't ever support its weight. But anyways, the Cadillac in Lake City went bust in 1971. It was sent back to Steamtown. It 1278 was then rebuilt by the Delaware and Hudson at Colony Shops, which is like Foamer Nexus in terms of like this is a name that you should know if you're into like post revenue service steam railroading. The Delaware and Hudson was huge for this. Colony Shops was like just a legendary shop in general. And so the fact that it was there is really interesting.
It was basically the last shop owned by a not tourist line that would service steam locomotives because it still had so many people who still knew how to do that. Like they were trained
Yeah.
on how to do it when steam locomotives were in regular service. So it was just another day at work for them, not, oh, we got to try to learn how to do this thing.
And then like for those of you who are diesel fans, the D&H had Alco PAs and Baldwin Sharks for decades. So these guys were this was like, you know, drawing the overlapping circles of what you're interested in and it's like basically a flower of everything's there at Colony Shops. Um but anyways, while this was all happening, F. Nelson Blount caught private pilot's disease and died when his plane crashed because owning your own airplane is a stupid thing, and you should never ever learn to fly. You should let somebody else do that for you.
An
And then,
airplane, besides the fact that an airplane is just a hole in the sky that you throw money into.
aside from that, it's a hole in the sky that'll kill you dead.
Yeah.
Um,
You throw money into it and it tries to kill you in return.
and so I will never fly on anything that isn't like a commercial airline flight. Just no. Um, but anyways, now we have to talk about the woke Vermont libcucks because they made steam engines illegal in the 1970s. Do not fact check me on that. Um, uh, in actuality, it was that emissions regulations were tightening in famously liberal Vermont, and steam engines, which produce things that can very easily be considered emissions, were not exactly what they wanted there. Steamtown moved to Scranton, Pennsylvania in 1980 to get away from woke. Uh,
Wait, is this Bernie Sanders' fault?
could be.
Bernie Sanders
I'm,
doesn't like steam locomotives? What the hell, man?
I'm
Come on.
I don't know. Maybe Bernie Sanders was. I don't think he was governor of Vermont at the time, was he? Regardless, let's
I
blame
think
Bernie. It's
we'll,
Bernie's fault, sure.
we'll
Bernie,
ask Bernie if he feels guilt about it at the next press conference.
but they moved to Scranton, Pennsylvania to get away from woke. In any event, there was a lot that happened to Steamtown after that, which is not relevant. But basically, I aspire someday to have my collecting skills be so great that not only is it not considered hoarding, but also that I get my collection nationalized because people complained enough, which is what happened. Steamtown eventually became a national park. It also sucks, but that's because the National Park Service is never funded appropriately. That's beyond this episode. We might talk about Steamtown at some other time.
There's a
But
reason it has the nickname The Lack of Steamtown.
yes. Um, anyways, due to track limitations at Steamtown, mainly the grades were too steep for these lighter Pacifics. The G5Ds were not retained for active service, and once 1278's flew time expired, it was made into a static exhibit. For the next 7 years, it sat outside, getting shit on by birds, and was purchased by the Gettysburg Railroad in 1987 because one of their existing steam engines wasn't really what they needed. So they did some horse trading. Steamtown got a 282 from the Gettysburg, and they got the 1278, which you can see it sitting outside at Steamtown in this delightfully crunchy image that I thought was going to be clearer when I grabbed it from Wikipedia. And then the 1278 in Gettysburg paint, presumably sometime when they got it, because it's not weeshing steam from every orifice.
I was about to say I don't see water stains all over the boiler jacket, so this must be pretty early.
And so the engine went into service in 1988, running the Gettysburg excursion trains. Let's go on to the next slide. So
Hmm.
this is some stuff that Zach might have to help me with, but basically 1278 was designed from new by the Canadian Pacific with a very interesting firebox design where so that image of Thomas the Tank Engine is not strictly accurate to how this steam engine is. The firebox in this is the boiler and firebox in this has water on top of the firebox, and it's called a crown sheet. So the water will go basically all the way to the back head of the boiler, and and so when a steam engine has low water in it, it can explode. And when a steam engine explodes, usually what happens is that the crown sheet fails, thus causing because of thermal shock or something else like that. And so low water level usually causes that, which causes the pressure to build up and overwhelm everything.
There was a really good uh, bit in the NTSB report that was taken straight from the October 1943 edition of the Railway Mechanical Engineer magazine. Um, if you don't have water over that crown sheet, it gets slightly strong. The steel gets slightly stronger until about 500 degrees Fahrenheit, at which point the strength falls off rapidly until you hit 1600 degrees Fahrenheit. And at that point, the steel has lost roughly 85% of its strength. And usually what happens then is that the crown sheet, that top of the firebox, can no longer support itself in between all of these staples, which are, if you see in the two images on the left, are all these lines that connect the top of the firebox to the outside of the boiler. And at that point, the crown sheet just starts to sag, and then it fails because it releases all of the steam pressure that is built up in the boiler through the firebox and through the flue tubes that run most of the length of the boiler. And this usually happens extremely rapidly, because that when that
250
steam
psi ain't anything to fuck with.
when that steam comes into the atmosphere, it is released. It wants to expand, and when it's in the boiler, it wants to occupy a space that is roughly 1,500 to 2,000 times greater than the actual space within the boiler. And it's all getting released in a flash when that crown sheet melts through and just gets just completely obliterated by the pressure of the steam trying to squeeze through a pinhole that forms
Yeah.
and then is
And
rapidly opened up by the steam.
and in addition to that, usually because the crown sheet is melting, so you can run out of water completely, but another thing that usually happens is that they skimp on water. I just watched a documentary on the Sultana explosion, and this is sort of like what caused that as well, is that there's just not enough water to cover everything. If you tilt the boiler one way or the other, part of it will be covered and part of it won't. So when you come back to a aspect level aspect, like a level plane, the water will slosh back and cover all of it, immediately flash over to steam, and then flash over to the point where the pressure vessel just can't contain it anymore, and then the whole thing goes up like a bomb.
Yeah.
And this is bad. This is really bad, I would say. This has been a thing that has been plaguing the railroad industry for the entire time that the steam engine was in service. And so Canadian Pacific designed the 1278 with a really, or the entire G5D class, I should say, with a really interesting form of boiler where basically the rear of the crown sheet would fail progressively,
Oh, it
basically.
was it was designed so that no matter where exactly the crown sheet got exposed and failed, it could happen anywhere along the length because most steam locomotives are built. The top right image shows that there's alternating rows of four of these two different types of rivets: straight rivets and button head rivets. Straight rivets are used in almost every single steam locomotive throughout the entire span that these uh, these rivets are supporting the top of the firebox and the top of the boiler. And those will fail almost uniformly. So the this class of locomotives was built with four rows of straight rivets, four rows of button head rivets, and so on and so forth until they ran out of space because the button head rivets were slightly weaker. So the idea was if that there was a crown sheet failure, the button head rivets would fail first, but then the straight rivets would still, in theory, have enough strength to hold up their portions of the crown sheet and thus minimize the opening created by this failure, thus reducing the explosive potential of the failure overall. And this is amazing because it was built entirely in theory. There was no practice. They were just looking for a way to minimize damage and loss of life and property whenever one of these crown sheet failures happened.
And so it, as it will come out, this is very important. And the it's so incredible that the Gettysburg had this engine with this design. And we'll get to this in a bit. But
This
I
is the
just
single biggest stroke of luck that will play into this entire situation.
just keep this in the back of your mind, everyone, that if the Gettysburg had any other engine of any other class that hadn't been like designed with this in mind, which their list of engines was long, none of them I believe had this.
This
This
was the
would
only
have
one.
this would have been worse. This would have been disastrously
This would have had
worse.
a death count.
And not a,
Probably a double digit death count. Maybe
yeah,
triple digit. This
I'm not certain triple digit, maybe. Um
Look, I'm okay. So I mentioned that I had a great great grandfather who died in a boiler
no, I
explosion.
believe you. I'm just
I
trying to
want
do
to
that
point
math.
out that first that was not his fault. He literally walked in the door ready to start a day of work and somebody else popped a boiler right as he did. But these would explode with such force that I have an image from the San Antonio Express newspaper that shows the smokestack of the locomotive that exploded in San Antonio in somebody's yard half a mile away.
Yeah. This is exception. I like just keep this in the back of your mind that like the Gettysburg Railroad by chance managed to avoid dropping a tactical nuke on a small town. But we'll get to that in just a moment. Um so now we need to talk about the 1976 to 1996 edition of the Gettysburg Railroad.
Ah, the
Okay?
good old days.
Ah, the good old days when you could run your steam engine around Horseshoe Curve.
When you
Uh,
could buy a steam locomotive for a song and a dance because every railroad was desperate to get rid of them.
yes. So the Gettysburg Railroad, the 1976 one that I'm going to refer to in text as the by its reporting mark, the GETY, was owned by Sloan Cornell, or at least it was originally. I'm not really sure. I think that he transferred ownership mostly to his son later on. But Sloan Cornell was a prolific owner of tourist railroads in Pennsylvania. He owned the Blairsville and Indiana, which was also known as the Penview Mountain Railroad, which was a 1960s operation. When he got the opportunity to own the Gettysburg, he moved the entire Blairsville and Indiana, lock, stock, and barrel, to Gettysburg, which included taking his train, which included steam locomotives and a couple Baldwin diesels around Horseshoe Curve to do so on a Conrail, on what must have been a very, very early Conrail train. Um, he then proceeded to operate, and the Gettysburg had 23.4 miles between Gettysburg and I'm not sure if and Mount Holly Springs, which is near Carlisle. I'm not certain if they actually still had the interchange that with Carlisle that they would have had to get to Conrail, but in any event, they still did a hefty amount of freight service for the light industry in that area, as well as tourist trains. But Gettysburg did not operate these things. Instead, there was a wholly owned there was a company, Gettysburg Passenger Service, that was wholly owned by the leadership at GETY, which by the 1990s would be um, Jim Cornell, Jim Cornell and his wife Julia.
Well,
They were
this
the
is where it gets a little weird. Sloan Cornell still owned and maintained his position owning the Gettysburg Railroad proper, but he gave Gettysburg passenger service to James and Julia Cornell. Like that
yeah,
was their child. They still they still had to ask daddy permission to go run trains, but they had trains to run.
yes, and Gettysburg Passenger Service used the reporting mark GPSX because they weren't officially a railroad. Um, and they used exclusively equipment that had been leased to them from the Gettysburg. So, whole song and dance business things here. Um, in the 1990s, the railroad had very few employees. And this seems like a jump to the 1990s, but there's almost no information about this online. Zach can get into more of this when we talk about like what did we learn and everything. Nobody's willing to talk about this online
Oh,
even. And most of the employees that were left that did work there were part-timers. um uh Very few of them were there full-time. Those that were like
two.
out of high school or college,
There were
or
two
were
full-time employees. That was it.
one of whom was college age and the other one was Jim Cornell. um and yeah, if you'll notice the other two pictures, Sloan and Jim Cornell were very camera shy. So we have no real information on what they looked like, or at least none that we could find. So if you have a photo of Sloan or Jim Cornell, please email us at
God damn you.
sygdoywtw@gmail.com. uh,
If it wouldn't break Zencaster so bad, I would exit out just to spite you.
we would never get the episode recorded.
No, we would not. We had so yeah, there's a lot of time cut out of the Charlie Kirk bit because Zencaster just said you're done. It
Yeah,
detected the woke and
Zencaster
kicked me out.
detected Zencaster detected a nuanced centrist opinion and was like, nope, nope, can't have that.
So we can't have funsies with this one.
So yeah, we don't know much about Sloan and Jim Cornell. Um but anyways, continuing on to the next slide. This is we need to spend just a moment talking about the absolute raggedy ass bullshit that the Gettysburg Railroad was doing. Um
And this was not uncommon for tourist railroading in the 60s and 70s. They just kept doing it well into the 90s.
Yeah, so this train that you see in front of you is engine 76, which I should have remembered what the fuck it is. I believe it came from Mississippi or something like that. It's a 280.
Mississippian Central, I think it was. Mississippian Railroad?
Sure, it used to be number 2 there, but this is a 280. It is hauling, what did you say these other two coaches were?
I believe that first car is an XE Erie or ex Delaware Delaware Lackawanna and Western Boonton car. I don't know which, but it used to be basically an electric commuter car.
Okay.
The second is was an auto rack of unknown heritage. This car was designed to carry cars, as in automobiles.
Automobiles.
The Gettysburg uh, decided to convert this into an open air passenger car and filled it with seats out of retired city buses.
Were they city buses? I thought that when they said bus seats, I thought school bus.
They were city buses. I
Jesus
could not find
Christ.
out which one, but based on the little bit I've seen of the inside of those cars, those are definitely city bus seats.
Yeah.
It was also apparently the roughest riding car on the railroad.
Yeah, as this
This post
screenshot
from
from
Railway Preservation News.
railwaypreservationnews.com. Oh my god, it was such a heap of garbage.
So this is a post from GW Lapel. I
I
think it's
don't
Lapel.
know.
I think I've heard Lapel. If I'm wrong, you can email us at syddoywtw@gmail.com. He said, at least during my tenure as general manager of the Gettysburg Railway, after the Gettysburg Railroad went out of business, which is who the owner of the Gettysburg passenger rail service that we're talking about today, uh, we had only one double deck passenger car. I believe there was another smaller car at the Knox and Kane, another Sloan Cornell operation previously.
Yeah.
And after one season, we took the big double decker out of service and overhauled its trucks, which greatly improved the ride. The side bearings were just about gone, and the snubbers were completely shot. It was amazing what renewing those parts did for the ride. The
What are
side bearings are the part that uh, they're the contact point between the truck and the body of the car itself, and you need that to be smooth so that the truck can turn smoothly under there and not jerk and pop as you're trying to take it through a curve. The snubbers are a part on the truck itself that basically act as a damper for uh, I believe snubbers handle uh, what would it be, lateral forces like forward and back within the truck itself. So this, when it's worn out, that car probably would have been bouncing back and forth between the other two cars in this consist for the entire trip.
That must have been terrible. It
And then we have
actually
some weird ass clear story combine at the back of the train. I have no clue what that is or was or if it's still around.
yeah, I don't either. But yeah, so it and people actually did say that there was another post somewhere in this chain that like the ride was so bad that they got thrown out of the seats in the auto rack.
I'd believe
And
it. They're designed to only be occupied by vehicles that are chained to the floor. This is
yeah,
not a
which
passenger car for a reason.
no, they're not. Oh my god. So I've got two things to add here. First of all, I remembered reading, and I can never have found this. If you know it, please let us know. Trains Magazine did a thing on like Ford shipping cars by rail, and they actually had a simulator for railroad shipping that they chained a minivan to or something. And in the setting for the center bottom position, it barely moved. And if you set it for top end, the car was being thrown up and down off its wheels and was only being held in place by the chains.
That's why it's chained down.
So just remember that. The other thing is that I forgot to mention this. Sloan Cornell also owned the Knox and Kane, which is notable for two things. First of all, they ran trains over the Kinzua Bridge, which is this gigantic bridge that was over a gorge in Pennsylvania that got taken out by a tornado in '03. The twisted
Yeah,
remnants.
they ran over part of the bridge from what I read. Like it got halfway condemned and
No,
then
they
they
ran
stopped.
over. They
Oh
ran
my
over the
god.
bridge. I believe they got told not to after a while, but the
But then
line
they would
did.
still let you walk. Like they would stop short of the bridge and let you walk
Yeah,
out on it.
yes, but and then the bridge got entirely knocked down by a tornado in '03. But more notably for what we're talking about is that the Knox and Kane um couldn't even find shitbox steam locomotives, so they went to China and bought an SY class from the Dantong Locomotive Works.
A brand new one.
A brand new one. That locomotive is still in service at the Essex Valley in Connecticut. Um, number now in the appearance of a New Haven steam locomotive, but they did buy one of the 6 SY class locomotives that made it to the US. Although I should note that it's one of the 7 built, because one of the 9
Yes.
8 built, because 2 of them did go down on a cargo ship that sank off the coast of Turkey.
Stay off of ships.
Don't go in the water. Was Moss Hills involved?
I I feel like if anything, that was like the one ship he was probably on, because it's like, well, my contract here is over. I need to get to this other location to start my next contract on this other ship. So I'll just book a cheap passage on this cargo ship. What can go wrong?
Thanks. I don't wanna I feel like we're just gonna find out more about Moss Hills, how he's, like, had 3 or 4 different ships sink out from under him, and each one of them is gonna be more insane than the last.
Back around the same time as the story happened, my grandfather had a personal fishing boat sink off the coast of Corpus Christi, Texas, and uh, rumor has it that there was an entertainer on board for some reason. I think it was somebody's birthday, but there was an entertainer and his wife on the ship that helped
Was
everybody
Moss
get off.
was Moss Hills around? Does anybody know? This just in. Entertainer M. Hills was seen being thrown bodily off the Titanic into a lifeboat.
Tried to refuse the spot on the lifeboat because he knew there weren't enough, but was thrown upon it.
But anyways, we must continue on to the next slide. Um, the Gettysburg in the 90s. So I'm gonna go back and forth between this slide and the last one. So engine 76 in the last slide is a pretty nice, clean engine, great lining, white smoke box
It,
front, yellow
so
railing.
it looks kind of shitty by modern standards, but it's just because of the way that it's painted up. Like this is very typical of early preservation era
I
steam
like how it
locomotive.
looks. I
Again,
like
if
how it
I could quit this session without just completely screwing Zencaster to spite you, I would.
I
Uh,
like how it looks. I
oh my
have
god.
it
So it,
looks
it it has lots of bright colors. Like there's yellow painted handrails. All the wheels are white walled. There is lining around the area underneath the cab window that's red, and around
the
most of the
tender.
body of the tender. The the lettering is a slightly different shade of yellowy gold than the handrails, but I mean, that's purely cosmetic. That's
It
all it
looks
is.
great, and it's got the nice green flags on the front that sort of offset everything. It's great. Every steam locomotive should have flair on it. But, anyways, if we go to the next slide, it looks like dog shit.
It Dude, this
It
looks okay. So those last years of steam locomotives operating in China that were so heavily documented because everybody realized that it was the last years, those locomotives have been beat to shit. And the boiler jackets are stained by dirt, debris, and uh, hard water deposits that have just been continuously dripped out over them over the years. Gettysburg number 76 in this photo looks like those Chinese steam locomotives did about a year and a half to 2 years before they were finally taken out of service.
Yeah, and, like, there's a rag wrapped around something right there on the
Oh
running
my
board.
god, I hadn't even noticed that one.
What is that? What is it wrapped around?
I don't know,
And
but
then
I
I
bet
like
you it
how
shouldn't have a rag wrapped around it.
No, I like how the smoke box clearly hasn't been repainted, it's just black from grime.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's leaking steam from someplace it clearly
S-
shouldn't be.
There should not be steam coming out there.
It just looks sad and depressed. I love the tractor tire just sitting in the weeds in the background. Um, the
I
spark
do also
arrestor
notice,
is off the top of the funnel.
yep. I do also notice that there is steam leaking from the cylinder body, which it's absolutely not because you need all the steam to stay in there to move the pistons. Any leak there is no bueno, and for any sensible operation, that would be a sign. It's like, hey, when we get this thing cooled off again, we need to start taking that apart and find out what that leak is, because that's wasted energy right there.
Yeah, this is this is all signs of incredible neglect. We have a clipping up here from Trains magazine in shit. What month was this? This was
I believe this was
19
the July 95 issue? July or August?
August of 1995 Trains
Yeah, because the
magazine,
July was already out by
which
this
was
point.
after the Gettysburg explosion. Privately, some experts in the railroad and tourist rail industry say it's no surprise this incident took place on the Gettysburg. Maintenance is minimal or non-existent, they say, as is formal training. Federally required documents to record maintenance are either non-existent or improperly filled out. Some observers said they cannot understand how the FRA has allowed the operation to continue. A contributing factor is that the way the inspection law is written, locomotives are inspected and approved by the owner, not by an independent authority. So this is bad. And the environmental conditions around the Gettysburg are worse because the Gettysburg is in eastern Pennsylvania, which has hard water. So there is a lot of limescale and just general shit building up inside these locomotives because we'll get to it. They aren't
Practic
getting a
practically
proper washout.
speaking practically speaking, that water is so hard that it comes out of your tap as a solid.
Yeah, it's like getting hit with gravels. I have hard water where I live right now. It's been beguiling my parents since we moved in to this town.
Yeah, I have really hard water, and I hate it because it
And
fucks with my fish tank anytime I have to change water on it.
I didn't know you had fish. We'll have to talk about that later.
Oh,
Anyways,
buddy.
notably, 1278 had a check valve on its feed pump that leaked to the point where the drivers would slip. Um, this
Oh,
is
we'll talk about why it
this
was
is
leaking so badly.
this is not good. So
Again,
and
wasted energy anytime you have a leak like that.
yeah, so we'll continue on to the next slide. So this is okay. 1278 in 1995 is thoroughly in the state of a jalopy that the owner doesn't care about. And I know this because I own such a jalopy. I can talk about that. We're going to do a bonus episode about that car at some
I
point.
was I was about to say a jalopy implies that you only have one.
My other car is fine. That car was made by the Japanese and it works great. But
Okay.
the
Okay.
the other one is made by the perfidious Swede who put the fucking oil pan on top of the subframe. So I can't take it without drop never mind. Anyways, so the 1278 was thoroughly in the I can't be bothered to fuck with this anymore stages of ownership. Numerous gauges in the locomotive had broken and either been replaced with something similar but not exact, which had then broken themselves and had then just been blanked off or removed entirely.
Mhm.
Um, the dynamo, which generates electricity for the locomotive, had been disconnected, presumably because it didn't work, and so none of the lights that remained in the engine worked. Um, uh, the
Oh, they did if
something
they plugged them into the generator that was sitting on the tender to work the headlight.
Why would they do that? Um, now, we have three different lines about limescale here, which I'll get to in just a second. It leaked steam a lot. We could go on for a while. Zach, please tell us about the injector.
So the injector is it was a what's called a self-lifting injector, and basic okay, this is not the most basic explanation, but basically what it did was it used steam that had already been produced to run through a special valve that was connected to the tender and was controlled by the fireman, so that when the fireman activated this injector, it rushed steam through the whole injector assembly and actually created a little vacuum on the line that connected to the tender. And that vacuum would then draw water from the tender and force it to the boiler. Uh, this particular one was or was rebuilt improperly. It had what would it be? There was a specific slightly tapered disc in there that had a hole, a specific size that was engineered for that particular lifting injector to function properly. Like the fact whether or not it could create a vacuum depended on the size of that hole. And instead of putting one that was properly sized on there, they put a disc in that was way too big. To put it in much simpler terms, imagine a straw that you can get at any restaurant in the US. It is a good size. You are familiar with it. You know just how much suction you need to apply to it to get the drink from the cup into your mouth. You know what's too much force, you know what's too little force. It's just an inherent thing. Now imagine you order a drink and the waiter comes out and brings you a glass of your drink and then a 1-inch PVC pipe. You're not going to be able to draw suction on that. And
Uh,
that is what was
un-
going on with
uh,
this injector.
I mean, Nancy Reagan might be able to draw suction on that, but
Hey man, don't you dare dismay the blowjob queen of Hollywood. All right.
but
But yes, this was one of the maintenance issues that the Gettysburg Railroad had and just kind of ignored. This injector was having to work so much harder than it should have that it was only supplying water to the boiler sometimes when they activated it. Like they probably would have had to have it on for several minutes to get the amount of water they needed into the boiler. Whereas if it had the proper cone in there that could produce the proper amount of suction, it would have been on for a matter of seconds each time.
yeah. And then finally, to sort of give you the pièce de résistance. I mean, this is just like I say pièce de résistance. This is just the embodiment of what the Gettysburg is doing. So there is a testimony of from one of the firemen on the 1278 how the engine is washed out. Okay, you take the four plugs out in the boiler under by the firebox. There's a plug in the right hand side and on the left hand side up front, and there's two in the back both sides. You take those out. There's three plugs along the top in the cab right above the firebox doors. You take them out, and then you wash the boiler out. You run, we have, I believe it's a 2-inch hose that we run through it. We wash it to the point where we get no sediment out anymore and the water is clear. So, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, 7 plugs in the locomotive have to be taken out, and then you run a garden hose through it. Meanwhile, Lynn Moedinger, the CMO of the Strasburg Railroad in Pennsylvania, summarized how a steam locomotive boiler should be washed out. And I'm going to paraphrase here. What the fuck? No.
Yeah.
Um, to give you an idea of what he said, you take out all the washout plugs, which is basically any plug in the boiler that allows access.
All
Then
of them.
all of them, and then they use a hose and try and get the highest pressure they can. They go to each washout hole and they try to wash out everything in the boiler. It's more or less difficult depending on the design of the locomotive. Their smallest locomotive, which was at the time 31, which was Canadian National 7312 beforehand, which was an 060, that had 34 washout plugs on it. And their biggest locomotive, which is Strasburg 90, had 17 plugs. Um, you wash the locomotive out as thoroughly as you can, wash it from the top down like you would a car, front to back, collect everything in the mud ring, and then you use your 4 corner plugs to wash the stuff out of there. And then you make a special attempt to rattle your arch tubes, which is a mechanical cleaning process. So basically, he basically take out he is describing like this deeply in-depth process to do this that probably takes 3 guys all afternoon. And the guy at the Gettysburg is like, fucking run a hose through it, I guess. There's absolutely no way that they were appropriately cleaning this locomotive. And you can tell because they asked Lynn Moedinger if he thought that 1278 had been recently washed out. He said, I don't know. I've never blown up a fucking locomotive. I'm a professional. It had lots of scale like that. And, I run a professional operation here, so I would never have that much scale in my locomotive. What are you, crazy?
There
Like,
is another part of the NTSB report that where somebody else is asked if they thought that the amount of scale that was found on the
I have that in
1278.
here, I think,
Oh, then
later
I'll
on.
hold off on that. But I do
Let me
I do
let
want
me
to refer to another part about the injector. Um, the way that the second fireman on this train testified that he knew that the feed pump was working was because that he heard the sound of it working and the movement of the actual pump. And that's kind of like if I were to put a really strong uh, impact wrench on the end of the crankshaft of my car and use that to turn it over, but it wasn't actually running. If you looked at that and went, "Oh yeah, everything's moving, so that car is running," right? That's the same thing. They
Jesus.
didn't actually verify in any other way that it was working, like seeing whether or not the level of water in the boiler was actually rising.
Well, I mean, they couldn't tell because, as and we'll get into this much more further on, the water glass had some issues too, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Um, so, anyways,
The
now we have what were you
the
saying?
Before we get off of this slide, the last thing I'd like to point out in that image that's shown in the top right here, uh, you could see a gauge showing zero because the locomotive has died. But if you go down and to the right just a little bit, there are two square bits that kind of sit on little domed pieces. Those are two of the washout plugs for that locomotive. The one on the right has a little bit of white stuff below it. The one on the left is surrounded by a thick layer of white stuff. That is the scale from the very hard Eastern Pennsylvania water. And it's just sitting there as an indicator that this hasn't been touched in who knows how long.
Well, it's even better because they didn't indicate that they had to dry the locomotive ever. So they probably filled it with the water from the hose that's the same as the water from the water tower.
Yep.
And so it's just even worse.
Yep.
Also, I'd like to point out just next to the gauge that there's an empty spot where another gauge should be.
Yeah.
This
Oh,
is
that one specifically is the one that the locomotive came with, and then that the gauge itself failed, probably due to scale buildup. So Jim Cornell put a new gauge on there, and eventually it stopped working too. At which point Jim Cornell just said, "Ah, fuck it," and then capped off the feed lines to it and took the gauge out.
yeah, like I would like to point out none of these gauges are unimportant. Like these are really
No, they're
important
in there
gauges.
for a fucking reason.
Like which gauge do we remember which gauges these are?
The one right there that's missing was the one that showed pressure traveling through the feed water injector. Like it
Yeah.
was on the downstream side of it, which was another indicator of how much pressure was or how much pressure was being used to put water through there.
Yeah. Like that's just not and it's just gone. It's just
It's
gone.
just
We
gone.
don't need to see that. So
All right.
yeah. Anyways, on to the next slide. Okay. Now we're recording again.
Oh my god.
We're just gonna start from here. So this is
You have to
Zencast
include this.
Zencaster's terrible. Anyways, so this is the accident. This is the accident that happened to the Gettysburg. We definitely didn't already record this a time and a half. But
Time and a
so
16th, maybe.
we are on a specific date, June 16th, 1995. The Gettysburg Railroad ran daily trips up and down the line to Biglerville, which is 8 miles away from Gettysburg. So they went a there and back, 16-mile
Sounds
round
like
trip.
if Trump named a town.
Don't put that in my head. I'll never be able to unsee it.
You're
Also,
welcome.
what day of the week was June 16th, 1995? Can you look that up? It's
Absolutely, Joe.
I think it must be a Saturday. But anyways, so
Friday or Saturday, if I had to bet.
we're so anyways, on the side of the screen you can see that we've got
Friday. Nailed it.
we've great. We've got a brochure from I think it's probably the late 1980s because it shows 1278 looking in a little bit better condition, maybe the early 1990s. But this is sort of the special events page that they've got for this. So it seems like it's a combination of the summer dinner trip and the moonlight dinner trip where they run on a Friday in June and at 6 p.m., which is the service they're running today. Um, the it's going to Mount Holly Springs, which is the entire length of the line, so about 25 miles each way. This is considered an extended service by the Gettysburg, and as such has two firemen and an engineer whose names that I did not write down on this. So Zach, what are their names and ages again? Because I messed this up when I wrote it down.
So we established that the engineer is Jim Cornell,
Yes.
Sloan Cornell's son. The first fireman, as identified in the NTSB report, is 18-year-old Dean Melander. The second fireman is 32-year-old Eddie Shara. Shara? I'm not sure which. I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Might as well just spell it, leave it to the audience. Actually, we could just spell both of them and let them figure it out.
Uh, oh, both their names. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, Dean Melander is Mellander, and the second fireman Eddie. I'm not going to butcher his name again in case I was butchering it. His last name is spelled Sharrah.
I was thinking Eddie Shara. That could be how it goes.
That's right. I can remember.
So anyways, they were both on this service along with Jim Cornell. Um, all of these guys worked full days already before they did the train. Jim Cornell had run the train all day. He'd gone home, changed, and then come back. The fireman, I think Mr. Shara had done. He was a supervisor at a nearby business, so he came after work um, for a bunch of other things. And everything. The 18-year-old probably had school or some bullshit. Uh, the train was 6 cars long, 310 passengers. We believe that the auto rack on the train was there. We're not 100% certain because the NTSB report is very low on content in some places, and I don't like it. But
Frustratingly low.
one of the things it didn't include that it should have was the train composition. So we're not certain. However, we do know from both video evidence and anecdotal evidence from the earlier days services of the train that the feed water pump that was leaking was not only leaking water bad enough that it was causing the drivers to slip, but it was also sending water and steam into the upper deck of the auto rack, because the upper deck of the auto rack was right behind the locomotive when the engine is running tender first up the line. So they had to actually move people out of the auto rack, or at least part of the upper deck of the auto rack, to get them out of the splash zone. We do have video.
Apparently, once you get back into like the back half of the car, that was the point where the steam and the water spray dissipated to the point that the Gettysburg Railroad employees went, "Yeah, that's fine."
Some guy was filming it from inside. There's like one video on the internet
Yes,
of
shooting
which
over the front half of the bus seats in
yeah,
this car on the
and
top rack.
it was it was great. The guy, of course, is filming of his laptop screen to show us, which is just the best way of viewing information on the internet. Um, if you have a better version of this video, please email us at
Oh my
sydddoytw at
god.
gmail.com. Um, Anyways, once the train leaves the station, Julia Cornell locks up and gets into her car and acts as basically chase support for the train. So she has a cell phone and a two-way radio and is following them on surface streets, meeting them at every crossing to basically, in case something goes wrong, in case they run somebody over, in case somebody has a heart attack on board.
Now, this is the part that's baffling to me is that they had the foresight to invest in a cell phone in 1995 in case something happened on this train, because completely regardless of anything that may happen to the train and the equipment itself, they were prepared for somebody to have a medical emergency on board that train, and Julia Cornell had that cell phone so that she could talk to the train via the radio, and then, if necessary, call for an ambulance, a fire department, police, or whatever on the cell phone and say, "Hey, this train is going to be at this crossing in a couple of minutes. We need help."
Yeah,
They were that safety conscious, but didn't worry about the condition of the pressure vessel at the front of the train.
I almost wonder if maybe there was like, because Julia Cornell is married into this nonsense that and is explicitly on the GSPX, the GPSX side of things as opposed to the GETY side of things, that maybe she's sitting there going like, I should probably do something, while Jim and Sloan are like, hey, fuck it, we ball, we've got a steam engine. Like I'm wondering
Well,
if
if
this
you want
is.
to be a worry wart, all right, we'll get you a cell phone if that'll make you happy.
And then walks we're going, fucking $800 for a fucking cell phone. The gauges on the locomotive don't cost that fucking much.
They certainly don't cost that much when you yank them out.
But anyways, the the train keeps the train continues along the line. We have a map on the next slide, so you don't have to imagine these locations in your head. It made it to Aspers, PA, which is at the base of what the NTSB report calls Wolf Pit Hill. There, a Gettysburg road freight, which had 4 cars behind a GP9, which was driven by the railroad's only other full-time employee, a man at the ripe old age of 21, waited to act as a helper to push it up the hill. I don't know if the road freight had followed it out of Gettysburg or if had been waiting there for it already, but in either event, and I also don't know if they left the freight cars behind or not, but in either event, the Jeep clipped up to the back of the train and got ready to shove it up the hill.
Either way, this was a regular thing, as noted
Yes.
in the report. Like, it is all right. Well, the passenger train's getting up to Wolf Pit Hill. All right. Well, freight
This is
train's got to wait there to help it get up the hill.
this is probably why the normal trains terminated Biglerville.
Oh yeah, probably. So
But
that they didn't have to do this. Maybe it just timed out right that the freight train did its switching and got to the base of Wolf Pit Hill at this time that was convenient for certain passenger trains.
yeah. But anyways, so now we have to while we're in here, we should just take a moment to talk about the actual training that everybody got, cuz obviously you might have noticed when we were talking about the washout plugs exactly how the firemen didn't really the difference in reality between what the fireman was saying and what Lynn Modinger was saying about how to wash out a locomotive. This is not from a place of ineptitude on any of the staff's part. So Jim Cornell
I
was
would
not
say
on
from most of the staff's part.
non-ownership. Let's put it that way. I
Yes.
just hit my microphone really badly. Hopefully, no one heard that. But anyway, Jim Cornell uh, was the primary repairman, primary engineer, and also primary trainer at the Gettysburg. Now, Zach, you work on railroads. What sort of training do you get?
To be a locomotive engineer, I am currently in the middle of a 5-month process.
Okay, and aren't you going somewhere soon? Like, aren't you going to training for
Yeah,
something?
I have to go to classroom training that is absolutely required for me to get my certification. I cannot do just on the job training. I do a combination of both so that I can learn the proper techniques and the rules around being a locomotive engineer, and then I go out in the field and see all these different jobs and territories so that I can learn how to apply these skills and regulations in varying situations.
Yeah, none of that shit happened on the Gettysburg. This was
That's
a
just to run diesel locomotives.
Yeah. This was a purely on the job training style of environment. Um, every everybody at the Gettysburg had been hired explicitly and had been hired by Jim Cornell and was trained on the job by him. Um, Millender, oh God, however you pronounce his name,
Melander,
Melander. He had been trained, and so he was 18. He was washing out a steam locomotive on his own. So that was on the job training specifically from Jim Cornell. The engineer of the road freight, who was 21, by the fact that he's 21 and a full time employee, does not imply that he went to college. okay? Unless he went to college really young, like
It's
17.
it's June. It's June. They could be on break.
Could be
Actually,
on.
the Melander was specifically stated as being on on summer break, and that's why he was able to work at this time.
Yeah, but the other full-time the other guy, the guy that we don't have the name for, um, I'm willing to bet because here's the thing. He was trained by Cornell on the 1278 with like fireman duties and things like that, and then got trained at age 21 to drive the ST9, and then was probably doing it
Jeep 9.
Jeep 9, I'm sorry, Jeep 9, was probably doing it by himself or with like he's the head of the train, basically, like him and a conductor over 4 cars. Although, and I'm willing to bet that the Gettysburg Railroad did not have a really good crew resource management thing where the conductor is actually the head of the train. Like, no, no. Who's driving? Who's driving? He's in charge.
Yeah.
So,
The well, let's look at the very root of where this attitude towards training came from. Did you see where Jim Cornell got his training?
from his dad, probably. I didn't see that, but I'm willing to bet from his dad.
That was the second phase of training.
Oh, no.
The first phase was, and I quote, he said he had been surreptitiously allowed to be the fireman on Pennsylvania Railroad locomotives near his home starting when he was about 15 years old.
Okay, I did see that.
So
I figured that was just sort of dudes rock sort of thing, but
a little bit, but then that was what he used to basically accredit himself as qualified to work on steam locomotives.
yeah,
Like
that's not
he
dudes
knew the
rock.
firing half because he was with these Pennsylvania Railroad crews when he was just a teenager. And let's be honest, that frontal lobe was not developed. He did not understand the brevity of what he was handling at that time. He just was like, "Yeah, I'm a fireman on a steam locomotive. Woohoo!"
Yeah, you don't get that gravity. You don't know anything of what's happening. But yeah, so basically yeah, he's things are occurring. And train is getting pushed up of Wolf Pit Hill by the Jeep. It's we've got 3 guys with middling levels of experience and 1 guy who definitely thinks he has experience, way more than he does. Um, Abraham Lincoln is
But
probably somewhere in the train.
it's okay. Jim Cornell did hold an annual training class for Gettysburg Railroad crews. It was once a year and it lasted approximately 4 to 5 hours. Most of it was watching a safety film, and they never kept any records on who actually attended.
I mean, that's good. I mean, forklift driver Klaus was half of my forklift certification, but
Actually, you know what? That's I wonder if they were no, it couldn't be the same one. There is another significant film that is still shown to pretty much every train crew service today. That was put out by the Union Pacific in like the 50s, in which a stuntman shows you all the things you need to be aware of when you're getting on and off moving equipment.
I've seen that
And
one. I've
yep.
I've
And
seen the Santa Fe's version too.
the fact that it's still circulating 70 years later just blows my mind.
Well, nowadays they can't run over someone to make a point.
It was a dummy. It's okay. That was legitimately part of my training at Grand Canyon Railway.
Outstanding.
I'm pretty sure it still is.
I hope, you know what I hope? If you work for Union Pacific and this was in your training regimen, please email us at
No, no, no. You don't have to. You don't
SYDDOYCW
have to. I've talked to people that have gone through training recently. It's still in there.
at Union Pacific?
Yeah,
Oh my God. That's
they love it.
fantastic. But that's that's excellent. So let's go on to the next slide. Hopefully not breaking anything on Zencaster. So this is a map of the route of the train, which I'm so glad that the website I got this from converted the NTSB image into a PNG so it's transparent. That's so nice. Um, So as we noted, the the auto rack the check valve had been so bad that the auto rack needed to be emptied out, which meant that this was not a new occurrence. This was not in any way, shape, or form something that they were surprised by. So it had already entered common
There
practice
was a rule of thumb around this.
that because the thing, and I cannot stress this enough, the engine was leaking water so badly that it was making itself slip. Imagine if you pissed your pants so hard you lost your footing. That's what this was doing. But in so this was such a problem that they made a point to not run the feed pump during the climb up Wolf Pit Hill, which went basically from Aspers to Gardner's. So, and keep in mind, this is the feed pump that works the injectors, right? The
Mm-hmm.
injectors that don't fucking work.
They kind of work.
Kind of,
Okay. They kind of work eventually.
eventually. But
You only have
so
to run it for 30 minutes before you hit the hill, all right?
yeah, for the entire basically just have the thing running the entire time you're sitting there waiting for the guy to hook up to you.
This whole fucking thing is so stupid. This gives me a headache.
It is really bad. Even better, the first and second firemen did not have any form of defined delineation of duties, and so we're basically operating off of like vibes, like who did what.
You've
Which,
worked hard enough. Come here, get out. It really was like
it,
come here, take a break. I gotcha.
yeah, and so like the first fireman, Millender, he was checking the gauge a lot more than Shira was, and he was checking like the water glass and everything a lot more than Shira was, like once a minute as opposed to Shira every
Oh,
five
the way he
minutes.
made it sound, it was like every few seconds, which
But
is the way to do it.
it is the way to, especially on a G5D, which has an automatic stoker, so you're not constantly shoveling.
Yes.
You're not constantly shoveling, so you can have a little bit more time and figure out exactly what you're doing. Um, the feed pump remained off the entire climb up to Gardner's. Nobody was especially concerned about this because the water glass continued to show a good level. Um, Shira relieved Millender just before the summit of Wolf Pit Hill, which was somewhere between which was just around Pond Road, which was a crossing. Told him to take a break. And the summit of this really was Gardner's Station Road, which I don't have an image of, but I have something close to an image of it. But in any event, Gardner's is a small town with the line crossing at it basically at an angle through like the left side of town, if that makes any sense. Looking at it on Google, and as it's put out, Millender was basically standing in the cab doorway of the locomotive, looking out at the road. When he hears what sounded to him like a muffled, there was a pop that was similar to the muffled round, like the muffled firing of a 22 caliber rifle.
Enough to get your attention, but not enough to like make you jump or blow your eardrums out.
Yeah, it wasn't loud. What happened next was noticeable. The boiler fucking explodes. If we go to the next slide. Uh, so so basically, the crown sheet had been starved of water. They were For anyone who just watched the video by part-time historian talking about the Sultana disaster, this is exactly what happened to the Sultana.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
the crown sheet had been more or less starved of water for the entire trip up the hill. There was some water at the back of the at the back of the engine, and so it was sitting up against the back head of the locomotive firebox. When they reached level ground right around the crossing, it sloshed forwards, covered the entirety of the crown sheet, flashed over to steam immediately, and the pressure vessel could not contain this because that is an immediate burst of steam. The the crown sheet was which was already weak as hell because it had been systematically run dry, um, failed towards the front of the firebox, and by the grace of God and the Canadian Pacific, the stay bolts fail at the button heads, and they fail slowly.
And just the button heads.
And so the engine does not detonate like a warhead. Instead, it goes off like a steam leak. So what happens is that
A strong steam leak, but a steam leak nonetheless.
while the train is going about 15 miles an hour over the crossing, like literally over the crossing, the entire contents of the boiler and firebox are vented into the cab, which on this engine is an enclosed all-weather cab because it was in Canada. So it is immediately turned into the space that scalds you to death instantly.
Or it tries.
It
Because they all
tries.
survived.
They all did survive. The sauna from hell, perhaps, would be a better
I like that.
descriptor. But so Millender is standing in the cab doorway. He throws himself from the train almost immediately and escapes with second and third degree burns over 10% of his body. Shira, who was in the cab, leaps out of a window and has second and third degree burns basically from his neck to his waist, and then broke both his legs jumping from the cab. Now, something we should note about a steam locomotive is that it's not going to stop if it has um, a boiler explosion like this. Like usually, the
Oh yeah,
engine the engine
it's
will
just not going
stop.
to make more power.
Yeah, like usually with a catastrophic boiler explosion, it will stop because the frame of the locomotive doesn't exist anymore. But like in this sort of gradual small failure, the engine will continue propelling itself forward until the steam pressure doesn't allow for it. To say nothing of the fact that there's a GP9 shoving it from the ass. So the engine so obviously to sort of stop the train, Jim Cornell has to shut off steam, put on the brakes, and bring the train to a safe stop, which he does at the expense of 65% of third degree burns over 65% of his body. Before he bailed out.
Which then makes him more respectable than the captain of the Oceanus.
Yes, by quite a lot. The first alarm is in fact made by Julia Cornell, who is sitting at the crossing watching this happen as Millender jumps out and like basically like collapses on the ground in front of her car, or her car pulls up just like a second later. But the the emergency services are called. You can see this photo on the on the right, which is taken from Trains magazine.
Oh, you're
Back when
getting tired.
I am so bad with my lefts and rights, but this is actually from the Gettysburg Times, which is back when local towns had newspapers. Don't we wish? But so this is, and it's a calamity. I cannot stress exactly how bad this is, but let's just sort of talk about how it could have been worse, shall we?
Yeah, let's take a look at this next slide.
Well, actually, hold on. Before we talk about how it could get
Oh,
worse, this is in the middle of Gardner's PA. Like I
yes.
didn't put in the screenshot of the Google Street View. There is like a house directly next to the road. Um there were 310 people on this train, and if I think about it now, I believe the auto rack was probably at the other end of the train, which would have meant that the entire like rest of the occupied train would have been directly behind the locomotive.
Well,
More to the
I think that I don't think they had a way to turn the locomotive. So
no,
remember
they run it
that
backwards. They run it
well, the
tender
video we
first.
saw showed the train, the locomotive running tender first, which implies that it was going northbound. And in this trip, it was also going northbound. So the auto rack may have been right there up against the boiler.
Well, yeah, but I'm also how would the water have sloshed to the back of of the boiler if the locomotive was facing the other way?
You're right. I don't know that it built
I
up
th-
on
it
it
built
built
up
up
at the
against the backhead.
I was thinking of that as I was talking and I was like, "Wait a minute. I
But then
think
this photo right here shows
they must have pulled the engine away from the train or they must have pulled the train away to not block the crossing."
they must have. I don't know. Again,
I
this NTSB report is lacking in some
is
frustrating ways.
slim on details, as are everybody else. Like it's frustrating.
Nobody will talk about this. I want you guys to know I spent the last 5 days scraping the internet. I paid for a trainorders.com subscription just so I could look at archives and use the search function, which is hilariously broken, trying to find info about this. Nobody will talk about it. This is good old boys
Except for
to the
one
extreme.
guy on Railway Preservation News who got into a tiff with people on there because they're all awful and deleted his posts.
Yes, I remember. I remember when he posted those photos because he worked for the Strasbourg Railroad. He
Do we just
was
want to
involved in the Yeah, it's Kelly Anderson. He was
if
involved in the investigation along with Lynn Modinger, and he had photos from when him and Lynn went out to look at this locomotive in the aftermath. And I remember seeing them when he originally posted them, and he got pissed off and bullied enough by the people on RYPN that he went back and deleted every single post he had ever made on that website.
and this was like last year too. This
Yes,
was so Kelly Anderson, if you are listening to this or if you know Kelly Anderson, I'm not even going to make a joke. Reach out to us.
please. Please, please,
Please.
please, please, please. We will cut in the photos somehow and give you full credit. I want to see
Or
this again.
we'll do like an addendum or something. We'll figure it out. But um in any event, the what I'm trying to say is this was going right through the town. This was right at a railroad crossing. The coaches were right behind the locomotive. And if the train stopped suddenly because the steam engine stopped existing, they were all made of wood or like wood metal composite or some other bullshit like that. I bet the GP9 would have crunched something before they could get it stopped.
Yeah, almost
So
definitely.
so I mean this seriously when I say it could have been worse in that like look at the picture on this on with the from the Trains magazine, Zach. Do you notice anything about the building directly next to the tracks? Do you notice how it's
So
entirely colored and then there's a giant black stain on it?
I was about to say that it sort of reminds me of the shadows from Hiroshima.
I hadn't considered that, but that is entirely within the realm of possibility. Like this would have evaporated some part of Gardner's, Pennsylvania. If nothing else, it would have just like, yeah, because this is actually, I've just looked it up on Google Maps. This is the Ziegler Brothers warehouse just after Upper Bermudian Road. So this might not be the crossing we were thinking of, or it would be there's another warehouse. Oh, I know where it is. I'm sorry. No, I'm wrong. I'm on drugs. This is another warehouse
Got
directly
any to
next.
share?
Unfortunately, no. This is another business that's located direct. Wait, what? Oh, there
So
might
all
have been another business that's no longer there,
but
but
all of those contents that have been emptied onto this building escaped from the boiler through number one, the open door that Dean Melander jumped out of, and two, the open window that Eddie Shara jumped out of. And it exhausted that much onto that building.
oh no, this is a Ziegler Brothers warehouse. This is Upper Bermudian Road we're looking at because that fume extractor thing on the wall is still there, and that tank
Oh,
is still there next to it. Which, oh my god, I think that's a tank full of diesel. That tank with one written on it.
Oh, no. Oh,
Because if
that would
you
have
look
popped that.
go onto Google and look up 51 Upper Bermudian Road in Gardner's,
No,
Pennsylvania, there's
I've
now
I've
a yeah, there's now a little hutch next to it that covers it with, like, a no smoking sign on it. So
mm,
so this would have definitely taken down this warehouse.
yeah. If the
And
initial explosion of the boiler didn't, then the explosion of the diesel tank may have.
it's not a big one, but it's definitely there, and then you would have had fortunately, this is in an industrial area, not a residential one, so it wouldn't have killed any bystanders, but still, anybody at the crossing, anyone in a lot of people in the train, this would have just fucked them up, like, real bad.
Real bad.
And then and so it's just by the grace of God this happened to the one engine that they had that did not have that had a, like, better designed firebox. Like, cannot by any like, I can't stress this enough that, like, this is the difference between a couple of guys got their skin melted off and a tactical airstrike on Gardner's, Pennsylvania.
You ready to talk about that boiler a little bit? Because I have a correction to make from earlier, from
Oh,
what I said earlier.
okay, we can. What did you, which do we wanna go on to the next one? Yeah, the
Yeah, let's
next
go to
slide.
that next slide.
So what do
So
you
I had it slightly backwards earlier. We talked about how the firebox had alternating rows of straight and button head stays, and I had said that the button head stays would give out first. I was wrong. The straight head stays give out first.
right
And
after I
that,
made that big impassioned speech about the button thing.
yeah, I am very sorry about that. I remembered that incorrectly. The button head stays are slightly stronger. The lower left image sort of indicates what had happened. There, as they were going uphill, and they were not putting more water into the boiler. All of the water that remained in the boiler was sloshed back up against the back head and was showing in the sight glass that there was plenty of water, but only right in that area. The uncovered portion at the front of the firebox was what had the failure. And it that whole area was getting hotter than the rest of the crown sheet that was still covered with water, and that was starting to get soft and weaken. So when they got back onto level ground and that little bit of water that was still in there and not anymore because they weren't running the injector because it spewed water all over the tracks and caused wheel slip, which they didn't want going uphill. When water covered that soft spot again, it flashed over in a boiling liquid boiling liquid evaporative vapor explosion.
Blevy.
That little bit, yeah, a blef right there at that little bit, and the you can see again in that image on the lower left, there is a dashed line that's marked with the label bulge. The peak of that is the area that was held on by a row of straight stays, not button heads. But it didn't deform more because the peak of that bulge was still being it, the button head stays were still trying to hold it back in its normal position. The image on the bottom right shows that area exactly. That lump in the center of the image is supposed to be level with the rest of that ceiling or the crown sheet that you can see in there. And that is, you can see a couple of large holes and where rivets were actually popped out by the force, but that is the only area that the pressure was released from the boiler. And because that was a relatively small area, that did two things. Uh, it reduced the effect of the steam being exposed to the atmosphere. So it wasn't expanding as rapidly as it could have, this also dumped water onto the fire and put the fire out so that it couldn't get any worse. The fire couldn't keep going and start melting other parts of the boiler. It killed the fire damn near instantly. But this was what caused the flash and the blowback of all the soot and exhaust and scalding hot steam into the cap.
Yeah, and again, I do just want to make this so incredibly clear. I know I've been making myself incredibly clear. This would not happen on any other steam engine
Any other one they had,
or any
just
other
about any
almost
other
any other.
locomotive in North America. Yeah,
Yeah, like this design was not common. This design
no,
is I,
this was a
okay,
speculative design.
and so if this had happened on another steam locomotive, like I'm gonna make the wild guess and say that Mississippian 2, which became Gettysburg 76, did not have this design.
It did
Um,
not.
it did not. If that one had gone off, it would have gone off like an IED
Yeah, we
or a
probably
bomb.
wouldn't have operable steam locomotives in the
That
U.S. today if
it
that happened.
it absolutely would not have. Maybe like they would have had to have followed the rules from like 1930, like the harshest interpretation of those rules, which would mean that only somebody who knows exactly what they're doing, like maybe Strasbourg, and that's it.
Yeah, it
uh,
might have even gone back to rules that had been in place in the late 19th century, in which you couldn't run a steam locomotive unless you could also run a steam locomotive and fix damn near anything that could have gone wrong with it in the field. You had to
yeah,
have that much mechanical knowledge of it.
yeah, like something that I don't have like a specific slide for is just that one of the main causes of this accident was deemed to be the attrition of knowledge that happened from the steam, like in the steam railroading industry, because obviously, in the 1960s you had guys who had been working at like the Norfolk and Western shops for 50 years who could do this, and then in the 1970s and 1980s, and then suddenly those guys start dying, and you've got
Yeah.
people who are further and further removed from when these are in operational service, and it's sort of like xeroxing a piece of paper over and over again. The image gets distorted and warped until you can't tell what it is at all. And that's what it was like for operating a steam locomotive.
Look at the image in the bottom right to see literally that. Like, that's not the image they took. You know that. You can still
Yeah,
tell what it is, but it's fuzzy. As a side
which,
note, we did try to get modern photos of this, and we were kindly told to fuck off. So
yeah, we
we
were
tried.
told I'll get to that in a couple of slides. But yeah, so that's it. Are we ready to go on to the next slide?
I would like to say, speaking to the attrition of knowledge, that I think this is the thing that pisses me off the most. Um, Jim Cornell knew that there was an extreme lack of maintenance on these locomotives. Literally everybody else involved didn't even know that they didn't know how little maintenance there was on these and all the stuff that they should have been doing. They were never trained. They did not. There is a certain bit of responsibility, but to a severe degree, they did not know that what they were doing was wrong and endangering their lives. And I think that's what pisses me off the most about this was they could have been taught and they specifically were not.
Yeah, they were taught by someone who didn't really know what he was doing, but thought he did. And so And because you've got to remember, this is the 90s, which meant that these guys grew up in the 50s, which meant that Jim Cornell did, which meant that you were never, ever going to get an environment where learning was encouraged as opposed to do the what the fuck I say.
No, I guarantee you that if anything, I feel like somebody probably noticed one of these things that was one of the many things that was going wrong. It was like, hey, that's shouldn't we do something about that? And
Do you want to
I
fucking
would
pay for it?
bet you, yeah, don't worry about it, dude. Don't you're worrying too much. You sound like a woman. You're just nagging me about these things. Don't just keep going with it. It'll be
Just shut.
fine.
Just shut the fuck up. Do you want to pay for it? I can only
Do
imagine
you
that's
want
what
a
it's
job tomorrow? Shut up.
basically. And
Yeah.
it,
This is a
I
culture
bet
we
you
cannot allow to come back, and we'll touch on that in a couple of
it,
slides.
I bet you that the Gettysburg Railroad only had 2 full-time employees, not because they weren't hiring.
Yeah.
I bet you they had others that did not continue working there. But anyways, on to the next slide.
Yeah.
How did this happen? And I apologize for how this is laid out. I couldn't make
There was
everything
so
fit.
much. There was so much here.
So
The
basically, everything that we have said so far is in service to this one slide, because you can run. Because let me just put it this way, the 1278 was running up until the moment that it exploded. There was absolutely no indication that anything was wrong with it. And realistically, like, say, a 1990s General Motors pickup truck, it would have continued to run badly and unhappily for years to come. I'm sure that it would have eventually broken down, but it would have been one of those laughable failures where something broke and then they just didn't fix it and they got something else, or they switched to diesel. But in a steam locomotive, there is one piece of equipment that is so important, and that is the sight glass. For the uninitiated amongst us, which I'm sort of tailoring this explanation to, the sight glass, or the water glass in a locomotive, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a thing that connects directly into the boiler, not the firebox, the boiler, that basically shows how much water is in the boiler. Working basically off of like water pressure, where if you have X amount of water in the boiler, it flows up through the pipe and goes into the glass at the same level. The sight glass is the only way that you can tell that how much water there is in a boiler, because the steam engines were developed centuries ago when we didn't have digital thermometers, we didn't have high temperature anything that could withstand the internal pressures and forces in a steam locomotive. This is the simplest and easiest way to do it, but there are problems that can be had with it. So just like how the rest of the locomotive is full of shit, because it's full of limescale, because Pennsylvania is like nothing but stalactites in pipes. The the pipes leading to the sight glass can get obscured with limescale. And when that happens, the water doesn't move that well. It's sort of like coronary artery disease, or where a lot of plaque builds up.
Ooh,
And so
that's a good comparison.
it is. It's like if the engine had been eating nothing but double cheeseburgers for the last 10 years. And so, and unlike the human being, where you can't really ream out an artery. Actually, no, I take that back. My dad's a vascular surgeon. That's literally what he does. But you can't do that without medical intervention. This is a this is a daily sort of this is something that you can do as like non-invasive surgery. God damn it, I keep saying that.
Well,
Dad literally does outpatient procedures where he reams out people's arteries. It's like you
I
can
was
do.
about to say this is part of a monthly procedure as part of the blowdown is
Yeah.
clearing this stuff out. It
Yes.
it doesn't take that long to do.
Yeah, I should clarify. Unlike this, where you have to go to the doctor's office in a person, this is just something that you have to do with the steam engine, because limescale and stuff will build up in there just because of it's in the water to some degree everywhere. It's just that in Pennsylvania it's really bad. And so the problem with the 1278 is, if you look at the picture on the bottom right, figure 12, you see that little black dot in the center of this circle that's kind of, you can kind of tell what it is. That is how much room there is in the pipe for water to flow, because the rest of the pipe that I'm circling with my mouse here is completely filled up with is completely filled up with limescale. This
It's
engine
filled with
had
shit.
this engine had like stage 4 coronary artery disease or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it's
It oh,
bad.
so water seeks its own level, but it can only travel as fast as the diameter of the tube it has to flow through will allow. And that's
And
supposed to be wide open so that the change of water in the sight glass is going to be happening within half a second of the change of level in the boiler.
yeah. And to give another sort of indications like the speed of stuff, um it's fluctuation in a water glass, because a water glass is about 3.5-ish inches, at least on this locomotive, was about 3.5 inches above the lowest level you could possibly get in a locomotive, just regardless. Like it's 3.5 inches above the actual base of the crown, like the crown sheet.
Yeah.
And the normal fluctuation in a water glass can be up to 4 inches.
4 4 inches plus or minus 2 inches. And that's just the water. So this is not like an allowable change. This is the level that you will see in the sight glass just as you're running down. It should bob up and down fairly quick. You have to watch the sight glass for a few seconds and kind of judge where the middle of that bob is.
Yeah, because like
And and that tells you where your actual water height is.
yeah, because the engine is shaking, like because it's a machine in motion. It doesn't stand still. Now, and so this is normal, and I believe again the expert that they've quoted here is probably Lynn Moedinger, who was again, and I
More than
cannot
likely.
he's the CMO of the Strasbourg Railroad at this time. Um,
He was a very knowledgeable and respectable
he
person when it comes to steam locomotives.
Yeah, like to give you an idea of what Lynn Moedinger has done, he once bought a locomotive from Steamtown to bring it back to the Strasbourg and had to abandon it in Scranton because Hurricane Ida flooded the yard and actually flooded over the top of the locomotive.
Holy shit.
That was
I didn't know that
Strasbourg
one.
80 that was Strasbourg 89.
No
It was
shit. And he
whichever
brought it
one
back and it still runs.
Yeah, whichever one was in 1969, like right during the like one of the ones that really impacted Penn Central. But it actually completely submerged the locomotive and he still managed to get it back and working.
That that takes a lot on several different levels to get a steam locomotive back from flooding,
Yeah.
from external flooding.
Yeah, it was completely immersed. But anyway, so Lynn Moedinger knows what he's talking about. That's what I was trying to say. I'm sorry if I got a little bit off track there. But Lynn Moedinger knows what he's talking about. He knows this. He is the closest we have to a guy who runs steam every day because he fucking does. Um,
Did
and
I think he passed away
oh, he's dead. But at the time of this,
at the time? Okay.
yes, at the time of this is the closest you can get. Like like nowadays, the equivalent would probably be like Ed Dickens over at UP
Yeah.
or Kelly Lynch at Fort Wayne. Like somebody who like I can this locomotive is in my dreams. And that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so 4 inches plus or minus 2 inches. So a 6 inch variation is what you're expecting. And the guys on the Gettysburg were seeing a half-inch movement at maximum and never more than that, which is, and I cannot say this enough, bad. That's really bad. That
It
means that this is so blocked up that it cannot effectively judge how much water is in the boiler.
it's dangerous on about 300 levels.
Yeah, like
And
it's
I have heard tell of people who run locomotives with water that hasn't been treated properly and it starts building up scale, and they can testify that even between like the first day after they clean out all this shit from the spindle that leads up to the sight glass and the last day before they clean it out again, they will tell you that you can definitely see the flow of water slowing down, and that like that's usually when they start running a little overly cautious, and it's like, well, We've only got a couple of days left until we clean this out again, and it was pretty bad last time. I probably should put some extra water in here just to kind of compensate for what I don't know.
Yeah, and these guys were just not doing anything. Like
No,
I
there
like
it,
I
it's fine. It's fine. Just send it.
no, it's not that it's fine. They did not know. So Millender, the first fireman, and the second fireman both had no formal training on steam locomotives outside of whatever Jim Cornell told them. So when they actually asked the helper engineer who was in the GP9, because he had also been trained on the 1278, how to blow out the water valve, he was told open the bottom valve on the sight glass and it blows steam through the glass to clean it. He also said it was not to check the validity of the glass, but just the drain. Nobody knew how to do this. And then they went and asked Jim and Sloan, and they asked them. Only Sloan knew. Only Sloan knew how to do it right.
So then why wasn't he teaching this?
Oh, he's probably too. Okay, let's be real.
He's too
Sloan.
busy rolling in his seafood money.
No, that's F. Nelson Blount. Sloan
Oh shit.
Cornell is probably up at the Knox and Kane salivating over how clean his SY is that he bought from China.
That's right. He's flipping out over that.
He's like, "Oh my god, this is nice. This is like buying your first ever new car." Like that sort of thing. And like his son is like, I don't know, writing him a letter or calling him on the phone. Dad, the locomotive's making a funny noise at me. Just
You
figure it
get the brand
out.
new car and you hand him like the old Packard that
It's the hand me down jalopy, yeah. But and then just everything they were doing was bad. So like if we look up at the top right, this line of text here, this is what you were talking about earlier, Zach. When asked if the amount of scale found in the spindles could have accumulated, the spindle is actually what like gets the water in there. That's the pipe.
it's the connection
Yeah,
between the sight glass and the actual boiler. The
yeah.
two connections, top and bottom.
Yeah. When asked if the amount of scale found in the spindles could have accumulated between monthly cleaning, one steam locomotive expert said, no, no possible way. Another said, I have never seen a locomotive that has as much scale inside the water glass spindle as the 1278. I worked on a lot of locomotives all over the country and never saw anything like this. Lynn Moedinger then speculated that in such a restricted condition, the spindles would be much more susceptible to being blocked outright by floating material or scale flake. The investigators were unanimous in their conviction that the amount of scale found in the spindles could not possibly have accumulated within the relatively short time between monthly boiler washings, regardless of the condition of the water used.
Oh
There,
yeah.
to put this in perspective, there is no way, no feasible way that these guys were doing it the right way, because you were supposed to do this under 49 CFR 230.40 and .39. You were supposed to do this every month,
Yeah.
and they just weren't doing it at all.
And that's a whole procedure where you actually take the sight glass off entirely and you basically ream out the openings.
With a pipe cleaner.
Yeah,
They're
you
not
do it
just
with a pipe
deposit
cleaner, or
crabs.
you can even do it with a drill bit if you have one that's the right size. And for certain portions of it that are just dead straight, you can just run a drill bit through there and blast all the scale out.
Yeah. And
It's a little labor intensive, but it's not a hard process.
no, and
This was willful ignorance on the upper level of management.
yeah,
And
this is
again,
either
at the lower levels didn't know that they didn't know.
yeah. I mean, I don't even do we think it's willful ignorance on Jim Cornell's part, or is this like actual like I'm smart I think I'm smarter than I am ignorance?
I am willing to bet that when Jim Cornell was a 15-year-old foamer getting rides on the Pennsylvania Railroad in the cab, when he was working with the guys who worked on steam locomotives all day, every day, he encountered at least one crew who was on a locomotive that was right there at the end of that cycle before the cyclist had to be cleaned out. And they're like, yeah, see how it's moving a little slower than normal right here? Like just a little slower. That's because there's stuff in here and it has to be cleaned out. It'll be in the shop for a couple of days here in a day or two. And when it comes back out, it'll be moving normal, like we saw in that other locomotive, a couple of days ago or whatever. But again, frontal lobe was not developed, so that probably didn't stick with him as to why that was so important.
Yeah, and so the NTSB estimated that those spindles were 85% plugged, which is just, like, catastrophic. Like, again, if that was coronary artery disease, that's death. That's
Yeah.
like you're losing that leg.
And at the end of one of these monthly cycles, when there is some blockage that is affecting the flow on a properly maintained steam locomotive, we're talking at worst 12 to 15% blockage. And that is noticeable. That is a noticeable difference.
This is you might as well just not have the sight glass. Just
Yeah, what's
guess.
the point? You
Which
might as
and
well just
again
go back to having the tricocks where you have to open three valves and see which one spits out steam and which one spits out water, which also the NTSB report noted those were filled with scale as well and could falsely show water where there wasn't.
and also, let's just point out again that the injector doesn't work that well.
Yes. So these guys, so between the sight glass being clogged and not being able to show the actual height of the water in there, and the fact that this locomotive had been running uphill, all that water was sloshed towards the back. So when the sight glass did eventually match the level of water in the boiler, that was only the level that was right there up against the cab because
Yeah,
they were going uphill at the front of the firebox. The water would be lower.
it's called the false head. It's
Yes,
on the actual thing in the last one. Um, I also just to like this is what happened to this engine is on par with the incompetence that blew up the best friend of Charleston in 1860.
I did like that they
When
specifically pointed that incident out here
yeah, when
in the
some
NTSB report.
yeah, I know. When some fat ass sat on the safety valve because it was making too much noise.
Yeah.
Like this is the level that we
That's
are at.
willful ignorance. Yeah.
It's somewhere between willful and tragic ignorance. They just didn't know and they didn't care. And like and yeah, it's just really bad. We're going to go on to the next slide and just sort of see what we learned, which was a lot. Um Zach, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so you know how you see a lot of people, like especially libertarians, that argue for less government oversight and regulations. This is literally one of the incidents that demonstrated why we can't have that. As a result of the the explosion on the Gettysburg 1278, we got so many new rules and regulations out of that that were not in place previously because it was kind of treated as a, well, yeah, you should be doing that. We don't have to tell them that they have to do that.
Yeah, they were operating under like 1950s understanding of like
It
if you own
really
a steam
was.
railroad, if you own a steam engine, you probably have like 300 guys in a back shop the size of Kentucky.
Yeah. And a lot of it, I mean, there were at the time several recommendations that straight up told you it's like, hey, go talk to this guy, buy yourself a copy of the policies and procedures of the Pennsylvania Railroad or the New York Central, because they both had really good programs for maintaining steam locomotives, and follow those recommended operating practices because that's what worked well. And as long as you follow that, you're not going to have any issues with it. You don't need more than that.
There must
So
be a great movie somewhere that could be just this. Like sort of like the Aaron Brockovich movie where it's just documents all the time, but it's just the investigation of this accident.
That would be I mean, that could be a
That
decent
would be
drama.
that would be nothing. Like, it would just be a bunch of foamers hooting and hollering as, like, George Clooney plays Lynn Motinger or something, and everybody else going, "What the fuck?"
No, no, it George Clooney has hair that is so remarkable and outstanding in his field that if he is going to portray somebody in the steam railroad industry,
It can't be
I
Kelly
think he's
Lynch.
earmarked. It's got to be Kelly Lynch.
Yeah, but Kelly Lynch wasn't in the steam industry in 1995. It
No,
has to
but
be
he doesn't have
19
to portray somebody in 1995.
it
He can
has
be
to
in a later one where he builds up the big steam program and gets it going.
we can, no, this is the investigation movie into this. Who would George Clooney it has to be George Clooney plays F. Nelson Blount or something like that. For 5 minutes and dies.
Reeks of oysters the whole time.
Uh-huh. But but yeah, basically what these new regulations are for like the 1472 day inspections is essentially turbocharged of from the 1950s and
Oh, they
1960s.
they doubled down on everything related to inspections for steam locomotives to make sure that something like this would never happen again. And to their credit, it works. They actually did base a lot of this off of operating practices of the Pennsylvania Railroad, if I recall correctly. And they tweaked it slightly. I think they reduced uh some
2%.
timelines in there, and they added a few things, particularly in documentation. So we have regulations that say you have to do specific regular service intervals. The most common one that we hear about is the 1472 inspection. And 1472 is the maximum number of days that you can run a steam locomotive or have a steam locomotive that is capable of being run um, before it has to be pretty much stripped down and inspected. And this always makes the news because it's very expensive to do this.
Yeah, this
And
is what gets a lot of engines pulled from service like indefinitely because this is $1 million inspection.
oh, minimum $1 million inspection.
Yeah.
And a lot of that cost just depends on what you find in there.
Yeah, like to give you an idea of why these are important. So, Illinois Railway Museum cracked open Frisco 1630 this year to do their for I believe it was I don't even think it was for the 1472, but whatever they were doing, they ended up pulling it apart and doing the 1472,
Yeah.
and they found among other things flues in that locomotive and boiler tubes that dated back to the Frisco,
Oh, Jesus.
which is, and I mean this seriously, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
That
So
is,
that, like I said, the 1472 is the most well known of them, but it does regulate a lower level of inspection every year, a slightly more thorough and slightly more intensive inspection every 5 years, and then every 15 years is where you hit that 1472 inspection, and that is way more involved because the annual inspection involves like checking A, B, and C. Every 5 years, you have to check A, B, C, and also D, E, and F. And then every 15 years, you have to check A, B, C, D, E, F, but also G through Z.
yeah, like disassemble the entire locomotive is basically a thing here. One of the other things that's sort of been a byproduct of this, and I feel like it was intentional, is that a lot of operators who used to run steam locomotives before the 1472 inspections were set up in around 2000 don't because
Yeah.
because let's be entirely honest, as we have now discovered from 1278, there is a floor of what you should be able of what like monetary value you have before you can run a steam engine.
Hmm.
Like there's a floor, and if you can't meet that, you're not safe.
Yeah.
And this has basically gotten rid of almost all of them. There's a couple operations. I have been to one that I felt was a little bit weird. Um, but that was on a private right of way that was not connected to anything. So I don't know if they're under FRA jurisdiction.
They shouldn't be. If they don't cross public roads and they're not connected to anything, they won't be.
Yeah, they're not. So that one is a Heisler that runs on wood still, and
Ooh.
yeah, the Silver not to badmouth them, but the Silver Creek and Stevenson in far north Illinois, um, that locomotive, I don't know if it was because it was a Heisler or whatever, but that locomotive had, like, 2 gauges and was fired off of wood, and I was in the cab of it all day. Definitely felt like maybe this was not getting a lot
The
of a lot of care.
the only steam locomotive I've been around that truly made me feel uncomfortable was another one that was not covered by these regulations. And
What was that
it
one?
it they've been a little litigious lately, so I don't want to say, but it was a theme park that does not have mice.
Does Oh, okay.
And they between what I observed and the firsthand knowledge I got from somebody who actually, no, I take that back. Firsthand knowledge I got from two different people who worked there made me say I'm not going to get on that train.
Was this the theme park that you said you splurged to go to a couple of episodes back?
No.
Oh, okay.
And that
Okay,
was
not
part of the influencing factor.
okay. Wild. So,
I'll drop a wild teaser out there that hopefully is vague enough. It was once owned by the Penn Central.
oh. Oh, okay.
There we go. So this stuff works. I mean, we have so many steam locomotives that are only still in service because they go through these inspections. It is documented that they have gone through these inspections, and most of this is followed up uh, by representatives from the FRA who specialize in steam locomotives coming out and observing these things and doing their own inspections. The I think the best example that I have is that uh, Grand Canyon Railway has two steam locomotives. At the We can see one of them in the right undergoing a 1472 inspection. The other one was taken out of service not for safety issues but for monetary concerns. It just got to the point where the owner of Grand Canyon Railway didn't think that it was worth the money required to have two steam locomotives. So, that floor that Joe talked about, uh, it doesn't, there is no economy of scale to that. That floor is multiplied by however many steam locomotives you want to run. So they said, well, let's cut costs a little bit and we'll just focus all of our energy on 4960.
I'm
At
sure
some
there's a
point,
f
they just
I'm sure there's an
was
economy of scale if you had 100 of them, but
it might be somewhere around there. But at some point, the I believe 4960 was due to go down for a 5 year, and they also had some work they wanted to do on the valve gear that was going to take quite a while. The It was going to be out long enough that it wouldn't be available for trips that they wanted to run with steam. So they went back and looked at the 29, which by calendar days was past the 15-year mark. In theory, it could not be run again without another 1472 inspection. However, they were able to apply for an extension because it hadn't been run for a significant chunk of that previous 15 years. But before they could actually get that extension, an FRA steam locomotive expert had to come out and take a look at this and say, yes, there is no more wear or damage or safety issues that have developed in the elapsed time that would keep it from passing a 1472 inspection. So we can give you an extension for, I want to say it was 3 or 4 years that you didn't use it within that 15-year timeline that would normally require this 1472 inspection. So you can use it for this many extra years, but there were so many extra steps there because there was a safety concern.
Yeah. And it's like, and this is why like some operations don't run Steam as much as they want to. This is why some operations run Steam all the time, because you're going to get your goddamn money's worth out of it. And
Hmm.
this is why sometimes Steam engines just go away. This is why Steam engines like just get turned into static exhibits after a while.
And the pure service days uh, are actually quite generous. The 1472 is called the 1472 because it is required after 15 years have elapsed since the existing boiler tubes were installed, or 1,472 days of service. And a day of service is a day in which there is a fire in the firebox and measurable pressure within the boiler. And 1472, this photo that's in the slide was taken by Eric Hatter, who at the time was the assistant chief mechanical officer. Now he is the chief mechanical officer. He did the math. He could run steam locomotives. Um, it was at the very least every Saturday and Sunday. It may have been every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for 15 years, plus extra, like a significant chunk of extra days in there, like maybe an extra Monday or Tuesday or something in that 15 years. And that would be what it took to actually reach 1,472 serviceable days. But steam locomotives are expensive. So you have to consider that as well. So that's generally why we don't see anybody actually hitting the maximum number of service days before an inspection. It's always the elapsed amount of time.
Yeah. So it's it's an involved thing. And then of course the FRA, makes sure that everything is done correctly. This is about the one thing the FRA has fucking teeth over.
Oh,
Cuz
documentation? They love bureaucracy.
well,
They
yeah,
wanna
cuz
make
this
sure you did that right.
cuz they don't nobody has Union Pacific money, so they can't go cozy up to the White House
Mhm.
except for Union Pacific, which
Only
actually
Union Pacific.
I wonder if Union Pacific is going to try and weasel their way into some sort of exemption.
In theory, they could. They don't run that much.
I'm just imagining in like 10 years, Ed Dickens has been fired because Norfolk Southern guys threw a fit or something, and they managed to blow up the 4014.
Hell yes, let's
Could
go.
you imagine the sound that would make? That would be like dropping a nuclear bomb.
Everybody within half a mile would just have their eardrums blown out. Windows would shatter,
That
but
would be the biggest explosion in
massive.
years.
Massive. But to get back on topic a little bit, we've talked about the 1472, what all that entails and how important that is. Another thing that they started doing was mandatory supplemental training for steam locomotive crews. So if you work for a railroad that has and operates steam locomotives, you are going to get, more than likely, you're going to start off with conductor training, which is its own thing with its own documentation and its own required number of hours and classroom time, to engineer training, which is another certification that has its own set of operating hours, classroom time, and documentation related to that, to then getting into steam locomotives, in which you are trained on steam locomotive stuff, because you're not only operating a train, you are operating a pressure vessel simultaneously. And there are things that have to go along with that. And that has its own set of operating hours, classroom time, and documentation to support it all. And a heavy emphasis in that training is how to check the level of water in the boiler and how to make sure that those devices are working properly. The amount of documentation that comes along with this training and every single bit of maintenance you do on a steam locomotive is done on purpose so that if we ever have another Gettysburg 1278 style explosion, the inspectors and the investigators can go back and go, where in this chain did something go wrong? Well, these people did X, Y, and Z training, but look, the fireman that day that let the water drop too low missed didn't ever do training on W, which is like testing the water level and making sure the devices are working properly. So that was where the failure was right there. And nobody wants to be caught in that situation. So they get it on paper that everybody was taught how to use this. And there's also a generally improved culture of, hey, it looks like you're doing that wrong, or you look like you're a little lost. Would you like some help? Can I teach you how to do this the right way? Here's how we're going to do this to protect you, to protect me, and to protect everybody on this train. There's a much stronger culture of making sure everybody's on the same page, and you're not just a little bitch if you raise your hand and go, I don't know what to do here.
And actually, no, I don't have anything else to say. That's I've got nothing else for this slide. Um,
Yeah, I think I'm done here.
yeah, don't ever get on board Libertarian Railways LLC.
Oh
Um,
my god, I don't go within the same county as Libertarian Railroad LLC.
but so anyways, we go on to the
Do you think
next.
they would file for an LLC, or would they just run trains and say fuck you?
I don't know. That's actually a really good question. Would libertarians file an LLC? May no, they're not. Well, obviously libertarians have to be because you can't not unregulate a business without a business.
Mm, this is true.
Maybe they do like an S corp or something.
Oh, this is a paradox. But before we get too far off on
Yes.
that, let's go on.
Um,
Let's go on. Where's all
next,
this equipment now?
where are they now? So we have several photographs here, three of which are copyright me, and another one I stole off of Flickr. So, um, the uppermost photo is 1278. It is now in Age of Steam, along with another one of the former Steamtown G5Ds that have been sold there. 1278 has never turned a wheel in under power just at all. Since working for Gettysburg. Um, I didn't realize it when I took this photo, but if you look at the back of the tender, you can kind of see the mark where Gettysburg is scrubbed off, and more importantly, the little square next to it where the logo would be. So
No
this en-
shit. Look at that.
this engine is at the Age of Steam Roundhouse in Sugar Creek, Ohio. The Age of Steam Roundhouse, I emailed them to ask if I could come down and take better pictures of the 1278, and they said no. Look at the NTSB report, despite the fact that I thought I had identified myself as someone who had done research, but whatever. Um,
They
I
want us to
don't
use the 300 times Xerox copy.
I don't particularly care for Age of Steam. I'll say this: it's about 2 hours from my house, through the most winding Amish country roads you'll ever see. Um, this is not. I don't like Age of Steam. Okay, it the best way to describe it is like paving a nature preserve to put up a zoo, because Age of Steam was, and I'm going to be very brief about this because I could go on for ages. Age of Steam was built by Jerry Joe Jacobson, a guy who had a lot of money from the stock market. He wanted to make his own railroad, so he bought the Ohio Central system. He built the Ohio Central system out of several smaller railroads in the Mid Ohio Valley, like around Zanesville and central, like southeast Ohio. Um, but his goal was to build a giant roundhouse to store his locomotives in. So he ran steam engines, huge steam engines, 484s even, and just didn't and then just when he had the opportunity to, he
Ran
sold
them
the
frequently.
ran them frequently, ran them often. When he had the opportunity, he sold the Ohio Central to Genesee and Wyoming, and proceeded to use the $300 million he got to build the biggest fucking roundhouse anyone's built since 1950 something. It has heated floors like my bathroom, even. Um,
Oh,
and
I'm
has
jelly.
like to keep like condensation out and everything like that. And I don't know why he has all the exhaust extractor hoods, because the engines don't run. Like 3 of them run, and they have like maybe 1,400 feet of track to do it. Allegedly, G&W will let them have trackage rights to Sugar Creek Town proper, but they've never exercised them. So you can't really run trains at all there. And it's so tight that you can't take photos with a telephoto lens or anything like that. You have to use the widest angle lens possible, which is difficult because it's dark in there, because it's a building. This photo was taken on my phone. You can't get near the engines because they filled all the center spaces up with crap from other engines that they're rebuilding to cosmetic perfection that will never run. Um, but
They're
anyways,
really gambling on a change of heart from Genesee and Wyoming or
no, they're
whatever
not.
future owner of the Ohio Central is.
I don't know if they are. I assume that Jerry Joe Jacobson had a plan of some sort, but he died, and he was buried across the street from the museum in a crypt so that he could always see the museum from his resting place.
It's not a
Um,
joke.
it's
I
not.
had to look this up on Google Maps.
There's also an alleged rumor that I want to make clear is probably not real, but it could be real. And the possibility of it being real, much like the possibility of Saddam having WMDs, is worth talking about. There is an allegation that Jerry wanted to be interred inside a piece of rolling stock and on property, and that the reason why they didn't do that is that they were worried that if they left it near the G&W interchange, G&W would take it by accident. I have no idea how accurate that is or isn't. I'm willing to bet that the bit about G&W isn't that accurate, but I could
Um,
totally see this man being
um,
okay.
maybe not. That might be the most realistic part of this rumor.
Okay, never mind then. This could be entirely accurate. Um, but in any event, Age of Steam is a weird place run by an old boys club now that Jerry's dead. I've not heard many polite things about how they're run internally. They seem to do a good job with crowds and everything on certain days, but you know, it's very much like an in-group sort of thing. Not not certain, you know, not my favorite museum. You can really tell it's called Age of Steam because all of their diesels, of which there are like a dozen, are outside rotting.
Hell yeah.
Although they are looking at expanding the roundhouse, so who
Oh
knows?
my god.
Yeah, I think they actually want to have it be a full roundhouse instead of the half shape that it is right now. Um, in the image below that, this is from 2010. This is from some guy's Flickr. That is absolutely the bi-level car. It still is there. It's not used, but it's there. It has plexiglass on it, which I can only assume was installed after the boiler explosion, um, and was seems to have some form of corridor connector to get to the coaches at the other side, which is hilarious.
Oh, I hadn't even noticed that. Yeah, that's a home built vestibule right there.
Yep, that's not good. Um, then on the right side of the screen, we have Gettysburg Railroad GP9 number 105. I don't know if this is the exact one that was used to push the train up the hill, but
It's the only Jeep 9 that I could find on the roster around that time. So I'm pretty sure that
yes.
was it.
And so I took this photo. This is at the Napoleon Defiance in Western. which is now a Pioneer Lines property. I don't believe it was before, but it now is. Napoleon Defiance and Western is famous for being one of the worst laid railroads in the country because it did not have any track maintenance done between the failure of the Erie Lackawanna and 2024. So the trains had a maximum speed of 10 and frequently were seen rocking back and forth by over 10 degrees in each direction. It's gotten better now. Pioneer Lines has sunk a shitload of money into it.
Now, I have a question about this top right photo.
Yes.
What's John Goodman doing with those two kids?
Oh my God, that's my dad. The kid in the red shorts is me, and I'm willing to, and based on and then that's my brother Tony, has to be age 1 or 2. This is the Middlestown and Hummelstown Railroad in Pennsylvania. I don't know where either of those places are in relation to Gettysburg or Lancaster, where we lived. I don't. I have no memory of this trip. I found that when I was digitizing some family photos, there's a picture of one of the Middlestown and Hummelstown steam engines that I did not include in here. And the only reason I even thought of this was that I was looking at the pictures of the Gettysburg's passenger fleet. And I was like, why does that look so familiar? And it's because when I looked at this picture when I was digitizing stuff, I was like, what the fuck is MIDH? And so that's been in the back of my head, and that is the exact color scheme of the Gettysburg. I believe this is the Boonton Combine or the Boonton car they had, the one that's like a former EL multiple unit. And so this must have been like 2004, 2005, based on how old Tony was. But this is clearly where at least one of the Gettysburg coaches ended up.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have any further information on this subject. I know that at least one of the Middlestown and Hummelstown cars is still in Gettysburg paint, according to Wikipedia. So that has to be within the last couple of years, unless that Wikipedia page hasn't been really neglected. So yeah, that is basically where are they now with the Gettysburg, and that's almost the conclusion of this podcast. Except we have one more thing to go through. Okay.
6 fucking years later,
we learned nothing. So this one is actually really surprising to me. I was doing some research on it an hour and a half before we hit record, which has been so long ago. I'm sorry, Zach. I believe you said you needed to go to bed at some point, but I live maybe 45 or 50 minutes from Medina, Ohio. Not Medina, Medina. Medina, Ohio. And
Medina rhymes with vagina.
Why would you do that to me? Why would you do that to me? I go there. My dermatologist is there.
Oh,
no, so she's not. She moved.
I have to wake up in less than 6 hours.
Oh, Jesus.
So tired.
I'll be really quick then. I'm so sorry. But anyways, in 2001 at the Medina County Fair, July 29th, 2001 to be specific, some chucklefuck who owned a Case Model 110 from 1918 drove it to the Medina County Fair.
This is a traction engine.
This is
basically a steam tractor.
This is a steam tractor. If you've seen Thomas the Tank Engine, this is Trevor the Traction Engine writ large.
Trevor.
But in any event, the guy, his name was Clifford Kovacic, drove his tractor there, in the process driving over 1.3 miles of freshly asphalted road, digging grooves into it as he went, and then arrived basically in the entranceway of the Medina County Fair, at which point the crown sheet of his tractor gave way and it exploded. And 5 or 6 people died. 5 people, I believe. This was the day before the fair was supposed to start, so there weren't crowds there, but Um, his tractor had a crown sheet that was in places less than an inch thick, some
Oh
places
my
closer
god.
to like zero point 0.3 of an inch, according to the
Ooh,
later investigation. Um, Apparently, according to the articles I was able to read, um, Medina, Ohio specifically at that time was known as some place where you could run a tractor that would never pass inspection anywhere else.
that thickness of the crown sheet is also one of those things that's now inspected in a steam locomotive's 1472 inspection. Like they actually do ultrasound testing to see that it is number one, not developing any micro cracks, and number two, thick enough to be able to sustain the pressures of a operating boiler. And the fact that that was down to 3/10 of an inch thick is terrifying. No wonder he had to take it to the lawless land of Ohio to run it.
I yeah, I don't know anything about Mr. Kovacic. I don't know if he lived there. I don't know if he bought it from somebody who was like, "This guy'll take it because he lives in Ohio and he can get away with it." I don't have any information on this. I need to put this again. I live 45 minutes from this place, and I have done so for almost 20 years. This is the first time I've heard about this.
You know,
So,
you keep telling us stuff like this, and we're slowly going to be able to triangulate your exact address.
okay. You could try you could
2 hours from Sugar Creek, 45 minutes from Medina. Let's start
I
the
gave my
the map on the wall.
please do not dox me, but I included the track of the tornado from the monorail episode in the next
Oh,
one.
that's right, you did.
I it doesn't take a lot of work. I'm just asking you politely to not. You could just go to where I live and just ask people about my last name, and not only will they know me in person, they will know my family and they will be able to direct you to my house. We are not we are not nobodies.
See, what you need to do is you need to move to somewhere that has another loosely related but personally unknown family with the same last name so that everybody thinks, especially if they're
No
doing
one
something
has our
prevalent.
last name.
So, well, I thought nobody had my last name too, but there's a funeral home that is apparently so reputable that it got me access to the monorail house.
Yeah, but I would have to move to Iran. That's where my last name is prevalent.
I'm sure you can find some like
Iranian
Iranian
immigrants.
pocket. Yeah, a pocket of Iranian immigrants
Yeah,
somewhere.
we've got to go to Little Tehran. But
So, what's
but
the
and
what's this video you got
this
that
video is
shows a cop like walking away from a case tractor that is very much not assembled?
so this is going to be a little loud. I hope it's not, but I don't. This is a radio shock jock from Rick Gilmore from WTAM, uh, which is a local radio station in Cleveland. It might be a little loud. I'm only going to play like a minute of it. This is apparently like his entire hour.
Let
I'm
me
gonna
let me know when you start and stop it so I can follow
right.
along.
I'm gonna hit start in 3, 2, 1. That is
Continuing coverage coming up at the bottom of the hour. Bulletins at 1. News Radio, WTAM 1100.
Well, tragedy has again struck the beleaguered Medina County Fair. Last year, E. coli. This year, a 100-year-old steam engine exploded.
this is such a
Say 3 people were
disrespectful
killed,
intro.
dozens injured. We've had phone calls off the air from folks that were concerned, that had friends or relatives at the fair and had not heard from them yet, and were worried. If you were at the fair, I'd like to hear from you. If you were at the fairgrounds, 216-578-1100, or toll free, 888-723-WTAM. Officials don't know what caused this. 2 of the people killed were close to the engine. Another was found 30 feet away. They don't know if that person was thrown by the explosion. Something is always happening, huh? And to help explain that to us is my good friend Jerry, my Icelandic plumber friend, who, by the way, ladies, is available. And you're qualified to explain what happened out there at the Medina County Fairgrounds?
Well, I'm not really sure other than what I've heard, but I'm qualified to tell you the reason why things happen like that.
Okay, what are your qualifications?
Well, I'm a plumber by trade, and I also have an engineering degree from Westside Institute of Technology.
All right, and you were explaining to me before the program, and please explain it again for the listeners, what exactly happens and how water boils and how it changes when it's under pressure and that sort of thing. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, basically, at sea level, water boils at 212 degrees, and when it changes from a liquid to a gas, which is to steam, it's called a change of state. That's right at 212 degrees, unless you put it in a sealed vessel. The second you put it into a sealed vessel, you could have 200, 300, 400 degree water. It depends on how strong the vessel that's holding the water is.
And
because
that would be what a steam engine would be, more or less, a sealed vessel.
Yeah, and then of course they harness the energy by releasing small amounts of the steam to run whatever components on the engine that they need to run. You understand?
Yes, I understand.
And so now every time that the water is actually safe, the water is it's in a sealed.
Okay, I can't listen to any more of that. That was it. Are you still there, Zach? Oh no.
Whoopsies, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Wow, that was so loud I couldn't hear you telling me you stopped it. There was nothing about that wasn't disgusting. That presentation.
Say, this is the most disrespectful way to announce a tragedy. I think Howard Stern had more respectful commentary on 9/11.
How far into the video did you stop it?
2 minutes, 9 seconds.
Okay, I got to 2 minutes and 45 seconds, and that dude was talking. The guy that was explaining what happened, like, knew what he was talking about, but that host was just, God, there is no worse way to talk about several people being injured and 3 people being killed that he knew of at that time than with a shock jock voice. Holy shit.
I stopped at 2 minutes 9 because I was like, I don't need to listen to this guy very loudly explain how a steam engine works when he's a plumber.
He was getting it right, though.
I bet.
Giving him credit. He's getting it right. All right. Y'all didn't hear as much as I did, but credit to that plumber. He knew more than he needed to know for his job. So
I can put it on for another. I can't put it on for another minute. That's not.
No, don't do that.
Our audience doesn't deserve that.
I have to be awake in 5.5 hours.
Yes, actually, I was going to say this is it. This is the end of the episode. Hopefully, our technical difficulties did not get too much of an impact. They will have gotten too much of an impact.
Hopefully we can splice them together enough that you don't notice the impact it had, but we legitimately lost an hour's worth of time trying to fuck with this.
Yeah, Zach discovered that he had a red USB port on his computer. That was fun.
I also discovered I have a dead USB port.
That's also fun. That's even more fun.
I also discovered I have a USB port that drops out randomly and causes Zencaster to shit the bed.
Yeah,
We're getting there. We're trying to do well for you guys, okay? I promise.
Yep. So with that disrespectful shock jock echoing through our brains, I really hope that you didn't have it, that anybody had it cranked up really loud.
You gave them warning.
I did. We are going to call it here. It is 12:30 in the morning where I am, so I am going to call it. Thank you very much for listening. I bid you a good day. Hopefully you are better at your job than Jim Cornell was at his.
And if you're not, strive to be. Because that I think that's the most important thing you can do is strive to learn more every day.
Yes.
Thank you all so much for listening. And hang on, I have to flip to the cover of this NTSB report where I wrote it down. But if you have any transit safety stories, I know this one wasn't exactly public transit per se, but we still want to hear public transit safety stories. Please email us at SYDDOW. I already messed it up. God help me, Joe.
Email us at SYDDOYWTW@gmail.com.
Oh my God, the address is in the description.
That is @GMAIL.com.
Fuck you. Oh, we do it for you, and we do it just because we like it. We're not making money off of this.
No, in fact, if we go with Zencaster, it'll cost money. So yeah, so that's it. Zencaster is OBS is reporting 4 hours, 19 minutes, 58 seconds.
3 hours, 19 minutes,
420. We hit
seconds.
420.
Kill it right now. Kill it.
Yep.
Kill it.